How do you want to get going?
All right, hello everyone. I'll just get everyone to take a seat if you haven't already. Feedback, one moment. There we go. Hello everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you here today to EdTech Alley. Good afternoon to all of those joining us in the room here. And also in Haymarket HQ here in Sydney, and also good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world for those watching remotely. We're very happy that you're all here, able to join us today. So EduGrowth is delighted to deliver today's program in a hybrid model. So whilst you are all here in person, we do have hundreds of people watching via the live stream as well. And I'll explain how we can connect you all in just a moment. So I'm Sarah Lamont, the Program Manager here at EduGrowth. We are Australia's EdTech industry hub. Through connection and collaboration, we are accelerating Australia's EdTech ecosystem around the world. So EduGrowth is connecting a community of education providers, industry participants, and EdTech entrepreneurs committed to reimagining learning in the digital age. As education transitions to borderless digital delivery, our diverse ecosystem will impact the future of learning globally, right here from Australia. So EduGrowth's programs focus on developing the entire education, technology, and innovation sector. We have a range of services supporting companies at each stage of their journey, whilst also connecting education providers and industry participants into the broader ecosystem. So today's EdTech Alley program will showcase leading innovation right here in New South Wales through case studies and plenary discussions, which will explore the evolving landscape of education right here in Australia, as well as across the globe, asking the question rather. I don't think we may answer it today, but I'm not sure. Are we building first-class humans or second-class robots? So before we get into today's discussion, let's first pause to pay respect to Australia's First Nations people. So with that, I would like to welcome Savannah Finn from the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Lands Council to officially welcome today's proceedings.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Savannah Finn, and I'm a proud Wiradjuri woman from Dubbo, New South Wales. I'm currently studying a Bachelor of Social Work at the University of Wollongong, while also working with Metro, going out to sacred sites with youth, making sure they're maintained and untouched. I'm a representative of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Lands Council and have the cultural authority and endorsements under the Aboriginal Lands Act for the land we meet on today. I'd like to pay my respects to all elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to you here with me today. Traditional owners are not defined by hands or by a pen, but through the natural landscapes of the earth, that being Mother Earth. The nation's country covers the Hawkesbury to the north, the Nepean to the west, and the Georges River to the south. A welcome to country is more than just words, it is a spiritual process. So on behalf of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Lands Council, board, members, and elders, I would like to welcome you all to the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation and extend that respect to you all meeting from places all across the world right now. Welcome, 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 and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Savannah. We appreciate it. So today's program is only possible with the support of partners. We'd like to thank Study New South Wales and the team for their support in making today possible. We'd also like to thank our partners, Haymarket HQ, for hosting us here today. Edgegrowth is excited to partner with Study New South Wales for more programs than just here at EdTech Alley. With an export masterclass series and women's syndicate program in the works, their ongoing support for the EdTech sector here is highly valued. On that note, I would like to welcome Carla Lampe, the Executive Director, Trade and International Investment New South Wales, Department of Enterprise, Investment and Trade, to open today's proceeding. That's an impressive title. Just watch your step.
Gosh, I always feel much more official with this. Look, thanks so much for that, Sarah. My name's Carla Lampe. I'm the Executive Director of Trade with Wales. I would like to, I know Savannah's just left, but really thank you for welcome to country and acknowledge that we pay my respects to elders past. Thousand years, which is a really thank you to EdTech Alley. Well, thank you for, I'd like to not add them as much as I'd like to do. I'm really proud to be introducing EdTech Alley. Such a program, including really strong partners to help us to and to help you at global. New South Wales is Australian. Earlier this week, Holland IQ published Australian and New Zealand. Now, of that list of 50, 43 of them were Australian. That's amazing. But what is even more exciting is that New South Wales in that list was home. 41% of the biggest companies, 30% of the revenue generated by the ANZ top, 75% of the startups are all. So it really goes to show the capability that we have in our state. New South Wales government really supports it. And what we're really wanting to do is to that capability. And we've done that, Investment New South Wales, the agency that our focus is on bringing the best of Wales and bringing the best of New South Wales. And what we're wanting to do today and into the future is to help make sure that your capabilities are known on the world stage. We've taken 2 going global export programs that are EdTech focused to both India and Indonesia over the past 12 months. These are key current source markets for international education for our international students. So we know that there's a real awareness of our capability in those, particularly in the Indian market, and then Indonesia is a real growing. But also it's a growing market for our New South Wales tech companies. At the moment, our colleague Suchita, who's based in India, as part of DIDAC in India, event for educational research. So we're keen to do more in this space. We've done a lot in this space already, and through this partnership, we've got New South Wales sector data to showcase the strength and the diversity of the increase the number of female-founded EdTech companies and deliver masterclasses that will support export capability. Today is just the start. We're really excited about this partnership. We're here to help you succeed globally. We do have one ask, though, and that is if you do succeed globally, let us know. So that means that we can go back to government and say, this is a sector that really values the work that we're doing and the international markets value. To share in your success. A, because we want to celebrate it, but B, it's because we
Thanks very much, Carla. So we want today's program to be an interactive one. We want to hear your questions and thoughts throughout discussion. So with that, for those watching online, please add your questions to the Q&A box on Slido, and you will get those questions directly to the facilitators for today's session. If you're in the room today, though, please do scan the QR code. You can also join the conversation on Slido, add your questions, and again, they'll get to the facilitators sessions today. So with that, let's get into the first session of the afternoon on the little-known phenomena of AI. The discussion will unpack what education looks like in an AI world. So to lead that discussion, I'd like to welcome David Linke to stage. So David is the Managing Director here at EduGrowth, bringing decades of experience leading education, technology, software, and services businesses across the Asia Pacific. David's also founded and successfully exited 2 EdTech startups and spent many years leading Pacific operations on one of the globe's leading EdTech companies. So welcome, David.
Thanks very much, Sarah, and welcome along. I'm told in my stream, Tosha, you need to move 2 seats across because you're too tall and we're cutting off the speaker when they come and sit here. So this is we're very simple and easy to operate here. So before I begin, I will also add my and pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land, and especially this week, especially this time in which we've had a bracing couple of months of division, and it's inherent on all of us who are non-Indigenous to reach out to our Indigenous brothers and sisters and cousins and friends and neighbours and colleagues to remind them that they are absolutely in our thoughts, and we will continue to take that baton on when they're ready to ask us to come and help them. Because I think we're now officially in a 7-day silence period. So I just wanted to add that piece in there. But today's conversation is a really interesting one, and it's not going to be me alone, because if it's just me alone, it's going to be an incredibly boring thing. So Cherie Diaz and Ray Fleming are going to join us. So Cherie Diaz has over 15 years of experience in education. She's currently the Executive Director of Education Innovation at Western Sydney University. She's also Non-Executive Director of MEGT Australia, which is a vocational provider, and previously was Managing Director of Open Learning, an EdTech startup based here in Sydney. And was, how many more board positions do you have, Cherie? Also Non-Executive Director of Digital Skills Organisation. Very busy lady. Welcome, Cherie.
Thank you.
And Ray Fleming is the Chief Education Officer at Innovate GPT. He's a global education industry leader, previously having been a role as a global education industry services manager at Google, and prior to that, higher education lead at Microsoft. Welcome, Ray. So I was also given some very clear instructions. So don't rock on your seat, because that's what apparently I was doing tech testing. So don't follow my lead. Just try and stay still, because apparently it makes people queasy when it's online. And I don't think we mentioned, but if you are a guest here, there are coffee facilities just in this little pigeonhole here, and the bathrooms are right at the back of the room towards your left. So, okay, why don't we get underway? I always try and do this when I facilitate a session, and I remind myself what we advertised and promised you that we we're going to talk about, because we'll try and get to that topic as we go along this afternoon. So education is the key to transforming lives. Learners across the globe engage in education to define their futures. So if the future is unknown, how can we build the education sector that will prepare students for this future? What role will technology play in the education sector? What emerging AI tools will change the social license? Oh, actually, I should go back and read that correctly. Will emerging AI tools change the social license between educator, learner, and society? And finally, what role do we need educators to play in shaping this society through their students of the future? So that's what we've promised you to talk about. But before we get into that, we thought it might be a really nice place to start to talk about, why are we in education? There's 2 people who are in education. I've been in education 20 years. So why don't we start, Tree? Why education for you?
A couple of reasons. And for context, I started off as a high school teacher. So I'm, and I've done many different forms of roles in education. But
I guess if I start with the fact that I'm always conscious that I'm family to go to university and the amount of opportunities and capabilities that has enabled. I take privilege in being able to drive change and enable access to education. That's really important to me. And I guess across that pathway, it's always been about how do I enable quality education, accessibility, and pushing the boundaries of what's possible and how we get there.
Fantastic. We'll come and unpack some of that. Ray, similar question to you. You're at the University of GPT now, but you've had a long time in education. Why education, and how did you navigate through that path? It was because no.
Okay, brilliant.
Here we go.
Okay, honest answer.
We need AI to turn on the microphone.
The first company I worked for when I left education was an education technology company, and that is 40 many years ago, and I'm still focusing on that. But I'm different to you because I'm not an ex. I was never a teacher. I've never worked in education. I've always worked on the intersection between education and technology. Why now, and why am I doing what I'm doing now? It's because I see that true potential ahead of us for the ability to broaden access to education globally using technology in a way that is unimaginable 5 years ago.
Absolutely, and I think we're going to see that change enormously as well. And personal level as well, I'm much like Ray. I've not been in a classroom or a vocational or a university space, but I've spent 20-something years in the intersection between technology and education, having worked for one of the largest EdTech companies in the world, but also founded and exited two EdTech companies that have been quite successful across Asia Pac. And for the last 6 years, I've been leading EduGrowth, which is the peak body for EdTech companies. And I see out of my eye line, actually one of our original founders and directors. So welcome to Tony Brennan, who's with us. Why don't we get into this conversation and start thinking about AI? Because it's not possible to walk through life today and not hear artificial intelligence and AI all the time, maybe many hundreds of times. So it makes sense before we explore that topic that we actually go back and make sure that we've got a shared understanding of what the term artificial intelligence means. So Ray, why don't you give us some insights on how you define AI, and then talk a bit and unpack some of that.
Yeah, I've been talking about AI in education for 8-9 years about how it can change things. But I think what I was talking about 8 or 9 years ago, and probably up until the last year, was about the algorithmic side of it. It's like take data, pursue that data down to giving you a kind of insight, just like Facebook do and Instagram do with personalizing our feeds and all that kind of stuff. I think what's changed is in the last year, almost exactly a year now, we're now into thinking about AI as a human interface. We no longer do we need tons and tons of data or lots of technical skills. AI was heading the way of there would be the David Beckham of algorithms, the one person that created the best algorithm to spot a student that might drop out, and they'd be worth $1 million and everyone else would be in the second league. I think now we're in a situation where absolutely everybody can drive an AI system because it's about innately human skills and understanding the problem we're trying to solve. It's not as much about the technical skills.
So I just want to unpack that before we move to Sri. So you're saying we've been talking about using algorithms for a very long time. Now we're talking about having them do some stuff. And then I think this is where we were talking in our prep, Sri, where you started to bring in this idea of generative AI. And are we talking about AI or generative AI? And do we actually understand that context? You want to unpack that for us a little bit?
A small challenge. So I guess for me, there's a lot of talk at the moment about what we should be doing or could be doing. And actually a lot of the examples that get used have been around for 8 or 9 years, and I've seen in different instances. And I think there's a couple of things that calls out is, one, within education as a whole, there's a layer of foundational understanding to build and capability to enable that. But also, my personal view is that in order to really engage with generative AI and reach its potential, starts with a couple of things, which is who is the customer or the person you're trying to reach, as well as what is the data and the insights that you need to drive the decision-making process about the what and where and how you use it.
Okay, we're going to unpack that in just 1 second. But before we do, I want to go back to something from you, Ray. So these algorithms that we were talking about, at what point do we consider them artificial intelligence and then generative? Like, what is this definition, or is there not one yet? We don't have a common language as yet.
Oh gosh, there's plenty. There's plenty of definitions.
Actually, another one, because you were at Microsoft. Was Clippy AI? This is important stuff. I need to know.
There's AI done badly and there's AI done well, I think. I mean, when we look back, Clippy was a very basic version of what we're using now. So I guess it was. But to answer your question, there's a whole load of science-based models about what is AI. I think there's two distinctions that I would see. One is it a computer science type thing? You know, the machine learning algorithms and all of that kind of stuff? Or is it the generative AI thing, which is about understanding the problem you're trying to solve and the skills to be able to solve that? It's more, if you think about an organization, it's not in the server room, it's in the boardroom that you're going to understand the potential of it. And that's the kind of generative AI world.
There is something that runs in my mind. If like we go and sit in a university, and we're going to talk about university compliance and all that sort of stuff in a minute, but in a university, you start thinking about research, you look at pure research, applied research, right? So pure research is we're just going to go and understand how, I don't know, mollusks move and populations change and so forth. And then hopefully you get something out of it, right? And try and commercialize it. Is the stuff that you're talking about now in generative, are we actually doing just applied saying, hey, answer me this? Or are we saying, go and find some insight and tell me about what things you find in generative AI? What are we doing? Are we asking a specific question, or are we being more broad and open?
We're definitely much more broad and open. The way you describe it both sound like Google search, and it's definitely not that. It's the creativity that's coming in from having a broader conversation with it.
All right, back to you, Sheree. Let's go back. You've now moved from the startup space. You've been in vocational training, and now you're in a university setting. So we have to talk about things like confidence and capability and compliance. So are we approaching the use of AI with some confidence? And are we capable about using it within the university environment?
I think it varies greatly. So is the confidence about the how and when we use it there? I would say in general, no. And part of that comes down to one of the insights that you shared previously, David, is we like to think that in education, and I'm going to talk more broadly across all types of education, that we have to have all the answers, or that we should know the answers and be the ones guiding the direction. And we're in a world where that isn't the case. And it's about how do we collaborate to build and test and pilot to work out the use cases that are going to drive change or to have greater impact or enable better quality service and scalability as an example, or process improvement. There is some challenges within an education framework, and that's whether you're in schools, vocational, English language, higher ed, etc. And that's we work in a highly regulated world. And we're regulated for a very good reason, but we're not the only highly regulated industry. And those other regulated industries are also testing and piloting and playing. I think there's a couple of components is how do we deal with the challenges in front of us? You know, so the quick one that if you do any search about AI in education at the moment, being bombarded with, you know, threads and policy discussions about AI and impact on assessment. And it's really important, and there's channels of conversation with TECSA and ASCA, etc. But there's also ongoing conversations that need to be had about content creation and quality of education delivery and process improvement that goes with it. So if I talk about the university that I'm at, which is Western Sydney University, we have an AI committee, and it has representatives from across different pockets of the university. I sit on it.
How long has it been in place? When did the AI committee get formed?
Earlier this year.
Okay.
Yeah. So we not only have representatives as to like who's piloting and doing stuff differently or wanting to pilot stuff. But we also have subject matter experts from within the university. And that's one of the great things is most universities will have academics from within computer science, etc., to be able to draw upon. But one of the other pieces that we have to work through is what is our AI policy and framework, and what is the skill development that needs to go more broadly than that.
I think we can talk about that in just a minute because obviously compliance is important. You and I, Ray, you and I have discussed some of this compliance stuff offline, and maybe we can unpack some of that here. Can you share some of your thinking about some of the compliance things that we need to think about from an Australian context in using and deploying AI in our education environment?
Yeah, I think there's two things. One is the way that we think about compliance, and often in organisations we think about compliance as being, follow these all rules rigidly, and the way that often that is interpreted in the education system is, oh, in that case we're going to prepare all these materials and they must be signed off. It takes us to create a curriculum, a year to go and market that course, 3 years to get students through that course, which means the example used to be we needed another 100,000 data scientists. Great, we could have them in 7 years' time. Now we need another 100,000 prompt engineers. Great, we can have them in 7 years' time. I actually think that attitude to the way we think about compliance is going to change. That perhaps what we need to do is have sets of rules that must be followed, and we can be clear that those rules are being followed, but we're maybe not checking every single word that's put in front of people. And we're allowing the creativity of the AI systems to present information to a student who's in the example, I can't remember when we talked about it, I was given the example for somebody else. They were doing a business studies course. None of the examples for the students that were in regional New South Wales were about agribusinesses. It was all about banks and the kind of businesses we find here. It's a really great scenario where you could say, actually, you are allowed to get creative with the content that's being delivered to a student at the point of delivery. And you stay within a framework that says we're matching the curriculum and things like that. That kind of creativity is great within a compliance framework rather than a compliance mindset.
There is a thing that's really interesting. I had a conversation with a deputy vice chancellor of education recently, and they were talking about some of the policies that they're putting in place. And I'll ask you to share some in a moment, Sheree, if you feel that advanced where you are. But they're talking about the fact that there are no generative AI servers being hosted at the moment in Australia. So, where is this data going, right? Like their concern was, where is the data? You're frowning. Okay, good. Comment on this. So there is this view that these AI large learning model servers are not actually hosted here. So there's regulatory and privacy issues. Happy for you to comment on it.
Yeah, no, I'm frowning because there's definitely servers here in this country. You can go and buy a service from a
okay, yes, but now if you're using a public chat GPT login, now we've got a problem, right?
Right, so now we're back to the world of consumer services versus enterprise services.
Okay.
We can cover that later, maybe.
100%. So we'll talk about that. That is the important point to remember, right? Like if you've got staff and students and even in your own environment, and you're using ChatGPT, where's that data going, right? And what data are you putting in there, and what stuff are you doing? Did you want to expand on some of that policy work that you're doing and where you're at in that process?
Yeah, so it's an ongoing process. It's not a polished policy or anything like that, but it is one that
it's generative. That was work.
Have you been waiting to get that in?
I've been trying to, yeah.
So it's an ongoing process. I think one of the things that I'm always keen on is how do we look not just outside of the higher education sector when we go to create these sorts of policies or frameworks. And if anyone hasn't seen it, I think the school-based draft framework that's been created is a great starting point to have a look at if you are curious, as well as other sectors. What do we draw upon from that? So it's a work in progress. I know there's active consultation processes happening between universities and the sector in general, that there's lots of dialogue, but I think we've got a way to go yet to build certainty and confidence to move forward. I think a challenge for all of us is how do we build it that it gives structure but flexibility to move forward as well, particularly because we're just at the starting point of what is possible.
I've just reminded myself that you can actually join the online conversation as well with the QR code, and in a second I'll get my phone and join the conversation because I'm supposed to be asking questions from that group in a second. But can you talk to us a moment, Ray, about the consumer versus business and this issue that was raised with me?
Yeah, so I was talking with a university. They said 20,000 users on campus last month accessed ChatGPT. So that thing about, oh, well, we're going to put a committee together and we're going to solve the problem 6 months, 9 months, 12 months down the line is already too late. People are already doing it, and they're using a consumer service, which means they're ticking a box that says it's okay for OpenAI to use this data for future training. Well, you know, if it's writing a LinkedIn post for me, or if you're a student and it's writing your homework assignment for you, you're probably not worried about that. But if you are, as is a well-documented case, if you're Samsung and your future product engineers are getting future product ideas out of OpenAI or testing things, then your own secrets are leaking out. And so we're still in the early days, we're still in consumer level services, but increasingly people are recognizing what they need is a service that is an enterprise level service. It's got all the privacy guarantees that we're used to with everything else we do. And those services are out there and people are building on those services. So I think we're in a temporary stage where, as a consumer, I'm happy using a public OpenAI service, but I know what I can and cannot put into that service. I suspect the 20,000 people on campus don't know what they can put in there.
That's a really important point, which I was thinking about, which is it's using an open API, right? Like it's using is there a security and privacy between my client and that ChatGPT instance, or can other people see it?
No, as soon as you start to get towards the APIs,
yes,
then you've got much more privacy guarantees.
But if I'm just using the ChatGPT $20 a month service,
yeah, not everybody can see it, but you've given them the right to use it. Yeah,
okay,
you've given them the right to use it.
All right, I have to change what I put in my ChatGPT from now on. All right, I think we did the regulatory piece, didn't we? I was sort of looking at a question online to get there. Okay, so education in an uncertain world. So our promised session outline was we're going to tackle this idea of education in an uncertain world, and that AI may be making it even more uncertain. So, Ray, will AI make preparing people for this world of work harder?
Will AI
make preparing people for this world of work, this changing world, harder?
No. I think the skills that the micro skill set you might need to manipulate an AI system versus, you know, a word processor, yeah, that's changing. That's new skills. But if you think about the switch we've been over the last few years, we've started to focus on what are either called soft skills, 21st century skills, or core skills. They become even more important, possibly more important than some of the technical skills, because those are the skills that allow you to go with the flow as technology develops, as the skills you require are needed, and critically allow you to be a human whose job isn't taken away by a robot. I think that's a big risk, and so those core competencies become even more important alongside what we're already learning. The challenge possibly for the education system is how do you blend all of those things together? But businesses have operated for years in an environment where they don't know what happens next. And so I don't think it's new for them. It's maybe just happening faster than it used to.
I think that's a really important point, right? The fact is the world is uncertain. It's always going to be uncertain. I'm not sure that AI is going to make it faster or slower, more uncertain. So I'm not sure that there's a significant problem there. I do think there's an interesting thing around the technical skills and the human skills. We'll come back to that in a moment. But Sheree, a similar idea for you, but to sort of put in context of learner engagement, right? Like thinking about, you know, you spend a lot of time thinking about educational engagement models, long-form education, micro-credentials, micro-learning snippets, all sorts of things. Do you see AI impacting these learner engagement models?
Yeah, and I think in a couple of different ways. You know, again, we can look at it from a learner engagement once they're enrolled, and even down to a step before that is what do we build and create from a content and learning delivery model perspective the content itself, the assessment methodology, and being able to not only future-proof or sense check that against what can be created by AI, but also evidence of the skills, capabilities that get developed as well. But it goes broader than that, because it's the how do we use to engage or entice prospective learners into the ecosystem? How do we enable more effective and scalable support models once enrolled? So beyond the academic delivery process or the education experience, the support mechanisms and the connectedness to further learning opportunities as well. It has to be an end-to-end understanding, and also not assuming that we have to build the entire roadmap before we get started engaging in it.
There's an online question along the same line, so I might as well ask it right now, which is how might AI revolution and enhance the learning experience in higher education, and what potential implications for both students and educators? I think we sort of basically covered that, right? So I just wanted to make sure I tick that off. There's lots of questions around the public and the private version of ChatGPT. So Ray, get ready. They're coming at you, all right? Okay, so let's go. Interesting to know, to align ChatGPT with current information requires a great deal of training. What happens to all of the content from prompts, etc., that is not recognized within ChatGPT's knowledge just yet?
Gosh, well, if you're using the public version of ChatGPT, you're telling them that they can use that to train the next version. So thanks very much. A bit like we're training self-driving cars to drive by identifying traffic lights. Every time it says, "Prove you're not a robot." That's the same in the public version of OpenAI. But whatever you do, don't interpret anything I say about the public version of OpenAI to mean you should stop using it. You absolutely do need to keep using it, because you need to be on the learning journey in order that you're ready for the next version. So don't stop using it, but just be careful about what you put in there, I'd say.
There's another question along exactly the same line, so I'm going to do it as well, which is there's a big differentiator between the paid and free versions of, I assume there's no instant, but I'm assuming it's ChatGPT. Users need to be super aware of what they actively put into public domain. What safeguards, and the question's just gone, what safeguards can you put in place to protect businesses, organizations, as well as their end users from themselves, I suspect, in brackets?
Yeah, so there's enterprise versions. I mean, we are days or possibly weeks away from things like the Microsoft Copilots, the Bard, all of the different services that are being built into the enterprise systems we're using already. So this stuff will arrive with users in an enterprise-friendly way. And then if you're thinking about it as an EdTech, you build within your own environment. You build your SaaS products using things that respect the privacy of data. You know how to do that. You're just doing it with a different tool set now.
So seeing you're no longer paid directly by Google or Microsoft, and you can talk independent of vendor, are they getting back to the same LMM, or they're actually independent services?
So we've got a number of different foundational models, so OpenAI's GPT 3.5, 4, Gemini from Google is coming out next. There's models from Anthropic. They're all different. I think we're going to have a little bit of a game where one will be better than the other. I'm expecting that the new model will be better next month. And then a month after, we'll find that this one is really good for medical texts. So I think we just have a race for a year or two until we get down to the point of understanding the different foundational models, what they're really good for.
Awesome. I think we can tick that one off as answered. Cherie, I'm going to come back to you, which is, there's actually really interesting question here. From an assessment perspective, how might we allow the use of generative AI in education, yet still ensure that students develop independent, a really easy one, independent, authentic knowledge which can be verified as their own? Go, 25 minutes.
Yeah, thanks. So I guess there's a couple of pieces to that. Is more and more we are being pushed as education providers to have authentic and flexible assessment practices. And if I'm actually going to pick on the vocational sector for a second, is one of the challenges for VET at the moment is how can they move as quickly as possible to adjust to the impact of AI for a couple of reasons. One is their curriculum development process you can do that in under 3 years and implement, you are setting a benchmark in the sector. And there's a whole lot of valid reasons for it. But when you then look at competency-based education and knowledge requirements within that, it's hard to ask that in so many different ways that you can't produce the answer within ChatGPT. And that's where we're also, if you're looking at it from an outside force coming in, things like the prevalence of reference to work integrated learning. That personalisation, work integrated learning component, how you create authentic assessment tasks, how you produce artifacts of learning that are actually individual or closer to being able to determine, is this the student's own work? Now, when I come back to the question about use of ChatGPT or etc. in assessments, what it does is, I think, challenge us to, as assessors, to look at how do we teach students of all different ages to utilise the tools, apply it in practice, and reference correctly. How do we lift the capability for critical thinking skills and reflection in practice? And if I talk about an example, when I first started high school teaching, the number one rule when you were doing a research, and I taught history, was I never want to see a document, an essay, an assessment task that reference Wikipedia, because Wikipedia was new at that point in time. Wikipedia is now openly referenced in assessment tasks in schools. And there's a reason for that, because it's evolved, it's enhanced, and it's more trustworthy. And I think that's the challenge, is if we're going to actually prepare students for the future of work, and it's not even future, it's now, is these are tools they will use in the workplace. So how do we help them to use it ethically, openly, and in an informed way?
There's an obvious question here. So I can remember when calculators were banned in exams, right? I can remember when YouTube was banned at school as well, by the way. Like, it's bizarre. So are we going to have AI in our exams at some point? Or we're not going to have exams? We're not going to have the AI in the room?
I think you're opening up the question about, should we still be doing online exams, or does everyone have to go back to campus?
Or that's another panel. We'll do that one tomorrow. Did you want to add anything there around this use, and where do you think AI is going to impact education?
I'm just going to say the good news is we've been here before and we've dealt with it before. One of the grandfathers of education technology, Stephen Heffel, said, if you're setting homework that could be answered by a Google search, then you shouldn't be setting that homework. Probably we need him to come back and remind us the same from a generative AI point of view.
Awesome. Okay, so if we can address the regulatory issues and the internal challenges and societal views of AI on our lives, are you excited or concerned about the impact of AI on the education system and making it more accessible, right?
I'm excited. I'm excited for a number of reasons. One is the potential to be able to widen our access to learning. So by that, I mean, well, take me as an example. Most of the people that are my age did not go to university. 80% of people my age didn't go to university, and yet they have to reskill. And at the moment, they're having to reskill out of the education sector because they don't have the access to the education sector. Imagine if we could provide reskilling for those people through the education sector. So that accessibility to learning and widening access is huge opportunity, personalizing things down. I don't write in an academic style. I think I would have a real challenge in writing in an academic style. I prefer to see things that are simplified down so that I can understand them. Great for doing that kind of stuff. So I think there's way more opportunities than there are challenges, assuming that we as humans can adjust to accept the challenges that it brings with it.
You raise this idea of social license. Maybe we'll come back to time. Sri, did you want to talk a little bit about the same thing? Essentially the same question. Are you excited or concerned in the short and the long term?
Definitely excited. I have education and innovation in my job title, so you'd hope I'd be excited. But I say that with also acknowledging that there are challenges. There are challenges in terms of building capability and confidence in all types of roles within the sector. There's challenges in ensuring that it is opening up access to education, not just in terms of access to the tools themselves, but understanding that in general, whether we're talking about students coming through primary school and high school, that they don't necessarily have access to the technology that we assume they do, but also the pace with which we need to uplift digital confidence and capability within our academic and professional roles within the sector as well. And the challenge of creating space to pilot and develop proof of concepts whilst already working within a tight curriculum. And they're challenges, but they're also ones that through collaboration and dialogue, we can actually create space for.
There's a really interesting point around equity, which you raised. I might come back to you on it, Sheree, but before I do, Ray, is there a technical difference between the free ChatGPT and the paid ChatGPT that some students may or may not be using, and are we creating an advantage for one over another?
Yes, we are, because the free version gives you a basic version. The paid version, I'll give you a classic example. The paid version, you can upload your course materials, ask it to go and read it, and then answer the multiple choice questions for you. I was taking a professional qualification recently, found out it got 80% in the tests. And so that's only in the paid version. So if you are paying out the $25 a month, you have better access to better technology than a student that's using the free one. So, we just think about that at a system level, about how we enable access. Otherwise, the same problems that we've always had. Some students have tutors, some don't. We're just going to perpetuate that.
And again, WSU sits in a really part of Sydney, and I'm pretty sure that there's a very high first family attendance rate. And I suspect there's a lot of first generation Australians as well who are going. How are you thinking about access and equity in terms of deploying these tools?
It definitely is front and center for us. It's one of those pieces where when we look at, and I'm talking more broadly, not just about ChatGPT, but when we go to look at things like tool implementation and that sort of stuff, we always take the view of, what particular use case, who and how we implement, with the intention of enabling access and equity, both for staff and students, and where possible, the broader community as well in how we do it, because it has a flow-on impact.
We've got a few minutes left, and I've got a couple of questions on the Slido, and it reminds me to ask in the room, please put in Slido, and it'll get to me, and I will ask it. And I do want to leave on the next steps, because I think that's an important component of it. But there is a really great question here, which I want to put to you, Sheree, unfairly, sight unseen, question without notice. How does higher ed, vet, and formal education providers, and I'm going to say in Australia, I think the second part of it is a comparison thing, stack up against platforms like Allison, in brackets from Ireland, I don't know the platform, which is completely free, AI enhanced education, AI platform learner experiences. How are we stacking up on the global scale, if we're even thinking about it at the moment?
That's a hard one to answer across the entire sector. I think
You should ask ChatGPT. You can tell us.
Depends who put the data in. No. I guess the one thing I will say is it is a conversation that is front and center for every, not just institution, but every part of the sector as to how we work. What I am impressed about is the amount of collaboration and dialogue between not just other universities, but other parts of the sector. I think if we look at things like the interim report from the Accord, the white paper, the jobs and skills roadmap, the increasing prevalence of the tertiary education sector as a reference, the working between vet and higher ed, that it is actually a joint coming together, an opportunity to look at how do we lift that capability.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to pick one or two questions that I've got here, because there's actually a lot in, which I think are really interesting. very quick one. Can we actually detect if students are using AI in their submissions yet?
No.
Can we, is someone commercially trying to sell me a service telling me that they can?
Oh, lots of people.
Okay, all right, good. I
But-
just wanted to check because I'm pretty sure
But the
I've seen
best
some ads.
advice from the people that know this stuff is no, you cannot detect it. Now, what you might consider it in is part of a holistic look at the student to say, well, this student was cruising like this and suddenly went to that. But in the basis of, can you detect it? No, doesn't take much to defeat it. And if you think you can, you're probably leading into your own biases as well. Unless it's like one of the 96-page papers that are on Google Scholar where it says, I'm only a large language model, so I can't do this. But if I wasn't, and the researchers weren't clever enough to take that out of the copy paste.
There's a 400-word question here, which I'm going to summarize as, if ChatGPT can summarize things and give you a simple question. There's an irony in the fact whoever wrote that question, right? If you did that, that's very clever, right? If ChatGPT can read something and summarize it, should we be asking students to read something and tell us, summarize it and tell us about it, Tree?
Yes, we should, because it's about being able to reflect on what you've learnt, put it in your own words, and be able to write that to, almost that learning circle or communication cycle that is important to be able to articulate. And we know this from educational practice and theory, that one of the easiest ways and best ways to measure if a student has understood and can apply in practice is to teach someone else and to communicate to someone else in a concise manner and an effective manner. And with those last words, I'm going to stop talking. Otherwise, it's not concise or effective.
Yes, we'll get the summary of it. So let's finish with this question. What is the immediate next step that we need to think about, Ray?
For everybody in the room and everyone online, the thing I would say is be using it. If you're not using it, you're moving backwards. Be using it because you're going to learn things. Be genuinely inquisitive, because I think that's going to fire off the ideas about what you might be able to do with it in the future, and also inform you about what other people are doing.
Do we have a piece of infrastructure we need to think about as well or not? Is the infrastructure in place already?
The infrastructure is getting there. So, talk to the smart people that understand the infrastructure, but it's probably not the thing we need to worry about at this point. It's about, we're in the stage of discovery.
Same question to you, Sheree. What are your immediate next steps that you're taking at your university?
Well, I guess not immediate next steps. We're already piloting and doing proof of concepts. What I would say is immediate steps or actions is playing with the tools is fun, but be clear about what is your use case, what are the measurements of success that you're looking for, and what are the ranges of use cases that you're actually measuring in the process. So, for example, one pilot that we've done, we not only built something new from a content perspective, but we measured the same process that we took with an existing content development to understand what's the points of difference in our traditional process. If I look at another process we're doing, and sorry, we've got a screen till next time's up in big red, so I'll hurry up, which is on metahumans and developing coaching skills for work-integrated learning components. That is a completely new type of use case for us. So again, this is the use case, but as we're testing, what other potential use cases, and who do we need to bring along that journey? Last thing I will say before you cut me off is, unless you take the microphone off me, is the other piece from an action perspective is don't wait till you've tested all the models and work out where you're going to apply it before thinking about building awareness with staff and students and developing and uplifting digital confidence and capability in general.
And I will finish on one piece, which is remember that we're not silos or islands in this whole process. There's actually a community who are wanting to connect and do things collaboratively. Universities, industry, EdTech entrepreneurs, researchers, the whole lot, building an EdTech innovation network, and we'll talk much more about that later. But join me, please, in thanking Sheree and Ray.
Thank you very much, David, Sheree, and Ray. That was fantastic. So I will just keep in mind for those watching remotely, we'll instruct everyone to keep the mics nice and close to their chin so there's no dropping out for our future sessions. So we'll now move into the case study portion of today's program. And for that, I would like to welcome to stage Nicholas Robert Alderdice, the CEO and founder of Learning Vault. So he'll present a case study on the Hunter School Performing Arts. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you very much. As I've been introduced, Nicholas Robert, the founder and CEO of Learning Vault. And today, what I'm going to cover is a little bit of background about Learning Vault and then more the case study that we used for Hunter School of Performing Arts. And it's quite an incredible initiative that Darren Pullman, the headmaster, came up with there. And it's one that we've looked at rolling out across multiple areas as well. So I thought we'd discuss the ecosystem from education to employment. Largely that was one of the key tenets of what they're after. Digital credentials, skills, wallets, and pathways, which is a huge sort of topic of conversation at the moment, before sort of exploring that case study and wrapping up with something that's called talent pools. Learning Vault is an organisation, for those that don't know, is an education technology business that specialises in understanding workforce mobility and skills with a flavour of education. So our mandate is all around an interoperable ecosystem of education content, digital credentials, and talent pools that support the skills-based economy. And largely we do that over three different pillars within our organisation, three product verticals. Education Vault, which is where we provide curriculum-based content to the vast majority of vocational education and training providers throughout Australia. We then have Credential Vault, which is all of our machine-readable, verifiable credentials. And then we have Talent Vault. So Talent Vault is a platform powered by proprietary algorithms to match credentials with employers for education opportunities relating to individual student skills. So digital credentials are the currency educators and employers dynamically treat skills information. This is the future. This is what we're seeing play out regularly and often with a lot of people wanting to be able to understand where is a student today, what skills do they have, where do they want to be, and how can we help them get there? How can we have visibility on that? And that largely was one of the key components from Darren. One of the things that's really important when we're starting to think about a skills-based economy is the concept of interoperability. So any provider can work with any credentialing agency, provided they are compliant with all of the various standards, and then that student can literally take their body of credentials, their skills passport, their skills wallet, different states and territories, and federally they're referred to as different things, but largely they're the exact same thing. And they can take that with them anywhere they go and show what skills they have. So lifelong learning journey is really summarised. We have K to 12, we then have vocational, technical, higher ed. We then have employment and corporate learning and lifelong learning thereafter. But ultimately, the entire thing is an ecosystem and people are consistently learning throughout that process. So how they acquire a skill or a knowledge and what they can do with that and how they can have portability of that to be able to move into and out of educational experiences and employment experiences. So we're going to be focusing predominantly on that K to 12, Hunter School, as it suggests. And they had some pretty unique requirements, but ultimately we want to consistently come back to this learner journey because this was Darren's key area of concern. Where do students go if they don't want to go into higher education? How are universities looking at our students if they are doing subjects that typically would not rate or rank well from a marks perspective? How can they put their students, give them the best foot forward because they do have fantastic education? But how can they make sure that Hunter School graduates are actually seen for the full value of what they have as opposed to a mark that they received? And how can universities ingest that? How can vocational providers ingest that? How can employers ingest that and understand that piece of information? largely a significant body of work. So one thing that I sort of will go through just quickly is the evolution of credentials, because this was one of the key components of how we could make this program work. And I do want to stipulate that it wasn't purely Learning Vault that worked with Hunter School Performing Arts. There was another Edu-Growth member by the name of EdTech, and EdTech and Learning Vault Power partnered quite significantly to be able to create some of those solutions. So if we think about certificates or credentials, we started with paper. Everyone printed things off, posted them out, got lost, no one cared about them. We then moved to PDF, emailed everything out. It's kind of cute. There are a couple of businesses out there that have credentials that are behind firewalls. That's cute. We then went to badges. Badges largely, as we refer to them, are just graphical images with a little bit of data behind them. And again, that's cute. Then we move into the next iteration of digital credentials. That's largely been the last series of standards that have come out. And we call them credentials and not badges purely for two reasons. One, we believe that they hold inherently so much more meaningful data and can actually be used to do so many wild and amazing things. And the second thing, when we come back to that construct of interoperability, Open Badges 3 is a standard, a badge in it. W3C is another standard, and that is the Web Consortium credentialing model. So when we're starting to think about how portable a credential can be, how portable a skills wallet can be, how portable all of these things can be, we need to start thinking about where is a student going to put them. So Hunter School obviously is a New South Wales school. We might be wanting to put some of their credentials in the Service New South Wales application. So in order to do that, they actually need to meet those protocols as well. That was an important consideration. Credentials, the ones on the left, they are Hunter School of Performing Arts. I will say we didn't design them. I have some strong views on it, but the students love them, that's the main thing. And there's an entire construct around levels of mastery within the school. And the school does some incredible things. So they really wanted to be able to have all of the different stages of the students and all of the different levels of mastery and progress towards mastery throughout. I'm not going to read through all of that because we're under the clock. I'm not going to read that either. Ultimately, credentials can do all of these things. I sort of touched on before, which is really important. They're immutable objects, they're flexible, they have full agency over the students, with them whatever they would like. And they are the custodians of them, and they. This is the platform that Hunter School of Performing Arts used as Canvas. Ultimately, what Darren wanted students to be able to do was log in and see at a glance every credential that they had, what level they were up to, what period of time they were up to in terms of that journey, and whether they should be, further ahead, whether they're very happy and comfortable where they are, but also for parents, guardians, and teachers to be able to see as well. So there is a part of the process where a teacher can log in and actually understand where all of the students are up to from a cohort viewpoint and understand who might need a little bit more support. So the case study, Hunter School of Performing Arts, what they really wanted was digital credential progression towards mastery, and captured in the form of a skills wallet or student dashboard so that they could interact with that one ecosystem. They didn't actually need to create another ecosystem. They didn't need to log into another piece of software, but also have the ability to take everything with them when they leave and put that anywhere that they wanted. They also wanted specifically, as I said before, to set all of their students up for success for either further education opportunities, whether vocational, technical, higher ed, or employment opportunities. The cohort of students that exists in Hunter, not every single student is going to go on to further education. That's perfectly fine. A lot of them go on to meaningful jobs within the arts sector. That was important as well. So the problem statement, HSPA was seeking solutions that could offer a credential progression to mastery, provide real-time feedback, reduce administrative burdening for teachers. They wanted to go paperless. They wanted to set a pathway to employment. HSPA actually had been working on this for about 3 years and out how to do it. And so ultimately, Learning Vault couldn't do it, edX couldn't do it, but together we could, and we came up with quite an interesting sort of solution. So, issuance of provisional credentials. So if anybody understands what a digital credential is, it's an object. Once it is issued, it cannot ever be changed. That becomes a problem when you're looking at mastery and you're looking at real-time reporting. Because I was not good at English, nor was I good at maths. But the idea of me getting a credential every single day, how I went in class, building up, I wouldn't want a repository that's got thousands and thousands and thousands of credentials. Doesn't make sense. What I would want at the end of every semester is be able to have a credential that's baked that I can anywhere and show what I've done. But in the meantime, what I would like is a visual representation of where I am at so that I can see how I am tracking, what I am doing. If I decide that I want to spend more time getting better at that particular skill, how can I do that? Where can I see where I am compared to the cohort? There's some really interesting. And then that skills wallet solution that we were talking about before, being able to share and showcase that of my choosing was very important. So we've been working with Hunter School of Performing Arts for about a year. Some of the findings have actually been wild, and this is why we're rolling it out with other schools as well. From a student perspective, we've actually seen significant, well, rather, Darren, the headmaster, has seen significant personal accountability of individual learning. So understanding where I am at in English and where I want to be in English means that I can actually ask for support, assistance. I understand what good looks like. Getting to, it becomes easier and faster for me. There's definitely the gamification aspects that help. The ability to explore how to level up across different credentials. So towards my level of mastery, I can actually understand and see what that next level of mastery looks like and what I need to do in order to be able to get there. And then setting up learner goals to share with teachers was a big one. Opening up the dialogue of understanding where I am, where I want to go, and then how teachers can. From a teacher's perspective, significantly reduce the amount of report writing that they had to do. Because of how the credentials were structured within Canvas, it would actually start pulling out all of the results at time, as well as teacher comments, assessments, as well as at the end of every semester, students would write a review of how they went, how they felt they went throughout the year, and then the teacher would respond. So if you think about a standard report writing process where a teacher has to go in and write a report about little Billy and say what they did and all the rest of it, it's already covered off because it's part of that process. That's all then bound in a verifiable credential. So there's no reporting requirement. We mapped everything to the Department of Education standards. Review cohort and provide additional assistance where required. So I can actually see in real time where my students are aligned to that cohort. So I can see if somebody is falling, they require a little bit more assistance. That's been really effective. The seamless integration of course results in multiple courses into one meaningful credential wallet. A lot of the parents and guardians actually reported how useful it was to be able to understand in one place how the people that they are caring for are going and how they can provide support and assistance. It's a really powerful case study that we've sort of done, especially in terms of real-time feedback, and then understanding from a cohort perspective, a student perspective, how powerful that has been. So this is from the headmaster, Darren. One of the most important things about this project is that it really set the direction of the values of our school and reflects where students are in regard to that. It has provided clear consistency for our teachers and helps ensure the skills that we want our students to develop and master during their education with us. So when we start thinking about a student that has credentials for everything that they've done, academic, non-academic, curriculum, cross-curriculum, co-curriculum, you actually start to understand the strengths of an individual. And you can start understanding all of the inherent skills that they have off the back of some of those things. When you look at putting that into an ecosystem or environment that machine reading to actually understand every inherent skill, you can then start looking from a university perspective, what does a perfect graduate of our particular program look like? What skills or attitudes do we want the graduates that complete our programs to have? And then working backwards, what are we looking for in a candidate to be able to? One of the products that we're working on and we've got clients and partners that have different talent pools is being able to ingest verifiable credentials, read all of the skills that are needed using open universal language. And then the talent architecture can actually understand and stack rank and shortlist what people look like in that process. So this becomes really powerful when we start thinking about admission into further education, employment outcomes, what employers are looking for, and connecting students or graduates into meaningful further education, meaningful employment. And then when people are employed, maybe they're part of an industry association, you can actually take that credentialing architecture further and start understanding, well, hang on, you're a frontline staff member in an aged care facility, if you want to be a leader, here are the skills or knowledge that are required for you to actually take part in that process. And they can be connected with an education provider or other things like that. I believe that I'm out, but that's ultimately everything.
Thank you, Nicholas. Yeah, so we do have a couple of minutes left for questions. I have Slido open in front of me as well. First question, let's start with, can you please elaborate on what the skills ecosystem is made up of and how RTOs and other educational institutions play a role in it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
So the skills ecosystem largely is made up of educators, thank you, largely made up of educators, employers, industry groups, and everybody that is sort of interested in how people can be upskilled to understand the most efficient way of creating workforce mobility in terms of, if we look at aged care as an example, you've got the JSA, you've got employer groups that are saying we need people that can do these things. You've then got RTOs that do non-accredited training as well as accredited training. And so everyone in that ecosystem ultimately forms part of that skilled ecosystem, and getting one side to talk to the other side and get results from both parties ultimately is what we're trying to achieve.
Okay, I've got a two-parter here. Are you deploying AI in the evidence to inform a credential? And then an obvious next question, how are you ensuring an AI isn't providing the data to inform the evidence record?
That's a great question. So Learning Vault, specifically our credentialing product, Credential Vault, we work with our what we would refer to as issuers. So we work with industry associations, governments, clients, RTOs, universities, and we help them inform a taxonomy to create a credential. So the evidence that goes into a credential is all from either a management system, our good friends from ReadyTech are here, a learning management system, a human resource management system, and ultimately that becomes the source of truth. And from that, all of that information goes into a credential. So we don't use AI in terms of credential issuance or creation. We actually spend time with each client figuring out exactly what skill, knowledge, and proficiency forms part of a program. Then we use rich skill descriptors, so they are machine readable definitions. And there's, Lightcast, edX, OpenRSD. There's some good ones out there, and ultimately that means every single person uses the exact same definition of teamwork at different levels. So a machine can then understand teamwork level 1 means a person can basically function within a team, communicate effectively, and do all of those things. So it's standardization that can then allow other forms of artificial intelligence or talent matching within different environments to be able to use that information to be able to do predictive placement and things like that. But within a credential, there's no AI.
Okay, there are so many questions here. So can you please elaborate on what highly skilled, skills-based economy means?
Can I elaborate on what a skills-based
elaborate on
economy
that.
means? Yeah, for sure.
Or
What-
maybe, yeah, really briefly, a couple more questions.
Sure. What we're starting to see take place in the employment place from employers is largely all around, I want graduates that can do these things. I need staff that can do these things. I can't find staff that can do these things. And ultimately, what they're referring to is either very specific skill or very specific knowledge that can be rapidly acquired. So sometimes that could take place in the form of a micro credential from a university, could take the form of an elective within a school, but ultimately it's a very short, sharp piece of information that an employer needs to be able to hire that staff member to fill a workplace gap. So that's largely the skills-based economy. We're starting to see a multitude of employers literally being very specific with the skills that they want their staff to have. You know, one of the big four recently sort of said, we're not looking at graduates, we want to take people straight out of school. We want to fund them to go through these programs because we're going to teach them every individual skill that we need them to be able to learn to be an effective staff member within our organisation.
Okay, final question. Does Learning Vault only support educational institutions such as HSPF, or what other areas do you work in?
Yeah, great question. Love that question.
Yeah, that was a
Um,
good one to end on.
Learning Vault operate across the entire ecosystem of education. So we work across K-12, vocational technical, polytechnic, higher education, corporate learning, lifelong learning. So 5 to 75. Our head office is in Sydney and we have offices in London. So we operate extensively across Australia and the UK, and we work with any form of education. So whether that's accredited, non-accredited, corporate, it doesn't matter, as long as it's skills-based learning.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Nicholas. We really appreciate it. We will now be going into a short break. So 20 minutes for those of you online, go grab a tea and a coffee. For those of you in the room, we've got some food and beverages on the side there. So we'll see you back here at 2:45. Okay, everyone, we're about to get started. I'll just invite you to come and take a seat. Okay, thanks everyone. And thank you to all those watching online. I know we are running a few minutes late, so appreciate your patience with us while we. So welcome back everyone. Our next discussion, we're just going to roll straight into it, is a thought leadership conversation on the digital transformation of the international education sector, led by Adam Brimo. So just to introduce Adam to you, Adam is the Group CEO and Managing Director of Learning, an AI-powered online education platform designed around the principles of social constructivism that enables over 200 education providers to deliver courses to 3.5 million learners worldwide. Adam was named Forbes 30 under 30 Asia for consumer technology in 2017. So thank you very much, Adam. Over to you. I should give you the microphone, shouldn't I? There we go.
Thank you very much. Great. Well, it's wonderful to be here with all of you today. Today's session, we're focusing on digital transformation of the international education sector. And I'm honored to be joined by Emily Oakquist and Jeff. Just give you a short background on each of our two panelists with me today. So Emily is the director of UTS Business Unit. New Business covers all new curriculum forms, such as short forms of learning, micro-credentials, and partner-based award courses. Emily has previously worked as the head of the UTS Postgraduate Learning Design, responsible for the pedagogical design and product development. So I'm really honored to be joined by Emily, the director of new business at UTS. So thanks for being here today. And Jack Goodman, the founder and non-executive chair of Studiosity. Jack is the founder and non-executive chair of Studiosity, one of Australia's first internet-driven EdTech companies, founded in 2003. Jack has been involved in startups since the mid-1990s and has experienced firsthand both successes and failures. He's also the president of Friends of Libraries Australia. Welcome, Jack. Okay, so today's session, we want to keep it as a conversation. So we have Slido up here. So if you scan the QR code, you'll be able to ask questions as well. I think questions will also come in online, from what I understand. So to get started tonight, I really wanted to begin today's discussion by getting a better understanding of your roles in the education sector. So starting with you, Jack, can you tell us a bit about Studiosity and how it's driving digital transformation for learners?
That sound, is that better? Good, excellent. Yeah, thanks, Adam. Well, as you noted in the introduction, Studiosity's been at this digital transformation project for 20 years, which is I was noting during the break. It's about 10 years before anybody else knew about it. But our mission is to increase life chances for students. It's almost exclusively tertiary students, and it's by providing personalized learning experiences using digital technology, so at scale. And the core of what we do is we provide universities with access to a platform that allows their students to get professional, personalized writing feedback within a matter of hours that's constructive and is designed to be educational, is academic integrity at its core. We work with 80% of the universities in Australia. We're in a very large number of universities in the UK, New Zealand, Canada, and the Middle East. So that has been a huge part of what we do. And for international, and there are hundreds of thousands of international students that have access to our platform. And we currently, will review probably 500,000 or 600,000 documents this year. I'm sure there will be lots of questions about how that changes in 2023 or 2024, but for now, that's a big part of what we do.
Thanks, Jack. So Emily, by the same token, can you share a bit about what the goals are of the new business unit at UTS, and how it's transforming the experience for learners in Australia and around the world?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I think at UTS, generally, we've got a strong commitment to social justice, and how that translates in teaching and learning is making education accessible and ensuring that there's the right support so that every single student can succeed. We need to create that environment at every part of the student journey, and that can be pre-admission. I don't know if anybody's tried to enrol in a university course in recent times. It can be actually quite challenging. And for an international student who may be thousands of kilometres away, that can be quite daunting. So I think the most important thing is to consider all of those touch points even before they arrive, and then, of course, during the whole journey, including all of their studies and extracurricular activities and onboarding and graduation and alumni and even, hopefully returning back for further learning across their lifetime. We also recognise that people come to university from all variety of ways and times in their lives, and are undertaking different types of learning, so that their journey is going to be quite unique. And we have to provide a personalised response to that. Technology is just core in everything that we do, right? So there'll be ways that we use technology, more advanced technology, more cutting-edge technology, and all of those touch points. I think that, for example, when someone applies to study and they're seeking recognition for some learning that they've done before, those are the type of things that we can harness technology, AI, to help us speed up that process, to make it turnarounds. The key, though, in all of this and the use of technology is that we need to keep that human connection. I think in the title of this panel presentation, we talked about, is it just going to be robots talking to robots in the end? Yeah. Let's hope not. We know that, to have a good life and have success, you need to have human connection. You can't just pretend that you will learn well if you're going to be chatting to a robot the whole day. Doesn't mean that those things can't exist, but they can't be the only one. So, yeah, generally the goals of, any public university is for their students to succeed, both in their personal and academic life. So that's what we're working towards.
Thank you. And I'm also reminded of some of the innovative programs that UTS has developed over the years. I watched quite closely the development of the Bachelor of Creative Intelligence, and I always thought that was quite an innovative program compared to others. Probably not on the agenda, but those are the kind of things I think really speak out to students.
Absolutely, and that program, actually, it's a Bachelor of Creative Intelligence and Innovation, and it has it's always with another degree. So you might do a Bachelor of Law and a Bachelor of Creative Intelligence. And that is now being delivered internationally in, I think, Arizona State University. There's also a range of electives that every student at UTS has to select one of. And it's all about enhancing those kind of critical thinking skills, problem solving, using creative methods. It's a pretty incredible program, actually.
Yeah, thanks. So just to give you some background as well on, I guess, where I come from in the education sector. So Open Learning is a lifelong learning platform with about 3.5 million students around the world. And it was actually built because we wanted to create a platform which was focused on creating a better sense of community in online courses. So when we first started about 11 years ago, the big challenge we saw was that when you move courses online, they're primarily videos and quizzes, or just passive learning. And unfortunately, still today, most courses, online courses, are designed in that way. But what we wanted to do was find a way of creating community dynamics, nice positive community of practice. And we did that by focusing on learning activity design and enabling courses to be built that are more socially constructive. So that's sort of the foundation of open learning. But today it's used to deliver everything from short courses to micro-credentials to online degrees for over 200 universities, colleges, and other departments around the world. So we're quite excited about that. And I think one of the challenges we've always seen is trying to enable people from a learning design perspective to create these kinds of courses and to create these kinds of activities. Because not everyone designing online courses or face-to-face courses has a background in education or background in learning design. Sometimes they're academics that are thrown into the act of having to build an online course for the first time. So I think that sort of moves into our next discussion, which is around I think it's the goals of each organization that we work for and how we're transforming learning and what the learners really want out of these learning experiences. So we always have a view of what we think learners are trying to, reason why they're coming to study with us, or what they're trying to get out of it. But they might have a different view as to that. So Jack, I want to start with you, particularly considering international learners, but I think domestic and international, I mean, they're all learners at the end of the day. So what do you think they want from this digital transformation, and are we really delivering on those needs?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. But I might just take a moment and say that what we've learned in the last coming up to 4 years now since the start of the pandemic is something that I think we still haven't really in the sector had a reckoning about, which is that we were all, I mean, the institutions that deliver education in Australia, but not just here, elsewhere around the world, woefully underprepared for that event. And I often quote my cousin who's been in the Navy for decades, says, the great thing about leaving a project to the last minute, it only takes a minute to do. After you think about it for 1 minute, you realize you also get a rubbish result. And I think that's what we haven't really had our own internal Royal Commission about. We really do need to reflect more than we have as a sector on why it is that we haven't invested in the digital space on a par with the physical spaces that we have always considered to be so fundamental to a student experience. And I think it was really driven home by the former prime minister when he essentially deported every international student in early 2020. I mean, that's what he did, right? He deported them. He said, you know what, there's no place for you here. You should get on the next plane home. And he left hundreds of thousands of students in horrible circumstances. I mean, that was probably the low point of my memory, living memory, probably most people's memory about international students. But when you do that, you are effectively saying there is only one student experience. It's digital. And as Emily just said, the digital student experience at UTS, and it's no different anywhere else at universities in Australia, is from the very beginning, logging in, getting your accounts, becoming a student is unbelievably complicated. And if you factor in moving from overseas, if that's what you're doing, and English being a second or third language, I mean, the user experience is impossible. It's amazing that so many people actually do navigate it. So I look at it and say, what a miracle that anybody finishes, much less starts. Honestly, if you think about our experience, and I will just make this point, put your hand up. David will say, stop banging on about this, Jack, but put your hand up if you've read quilt data recently. Because if you look at the quilt data, and I would love it if everyone running a university would look at the quilt data and be, just reflect on it. we're not delivering a great experience for our students. And the pandemic shone a light on it. If you specifically look at international students, their data's worse, not surprisingly, right? They've come a long way, paid a lot of money, and kind of let down. Learner engagement in particular. Isn't that what technology is used for by everybody? It's used to engage people. That's what social media, used well, is for. Also used badly, but used well. That's what it's for. Uh, I, so our mission has been: can we provide students with at least a little glimmer of hope, something pleasant and positive and constructive and educational? That's what we do. We go deep into one thing that we can help a student solve to take pressure off of their lives while they're struggling in an academic situation. We do some other things as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about that after this. Hang around. But I don't think anyone invests in higher education, invests nearly enough in user experience to deliver anything meaningful that translates into a digital experience that's on a par with being on a campus that's within a 10-minute walk from here. The campuses are lovely. The buildings are fabulous. But when you log into the virtual space, it's nothing like that.
So Jack, I have to ask, given I guess, where we are now and what we've seen during COVID, are you optimistic about the direction things are going, or do you think that people have not learned some of these lessons?
Oh, I think that, much like I think, we say about democracies, may they survive, universities are going to do the right thing after trying all the other things. And that's sort of what they're doing now. But it's way too slow. It's taking way too long. And we haven't learned the lessons of the pandemic. It's been almost 4 years now, Adam. Almost 4 years since 2020 shutdown. We will be coming up to that in February. And, the student experience hasn't changed that much.
Unfortunately, I have to agree. Given our experience as well, in trying to encourage institutions to redesign their programs so that the student experience and engagement is at the forefront, and the work that goes into that, it is very challenging sometimes seeing what is produced and where the resources are allocated. But Emily, I probably want to turn to you now and see if you can share with us some of the work that UTS is doing to create a much better learning experience for students.
Yes, well, it might be every other university, but UTS.
And I don't mean to beat up on UTS at all. This is an observation across.
Absolutely. I mean, across the sector, we were not prepared. UTS has been always an on-campus university, and we only launched our first online postgraduate degree, or first online degree. It happened to be postgraduate. The day before the pandemic broke, just completely coincidental. So we had invested, we had a team of expert learning designers and put a whole lot of developed standards and things and launched our first course, and we're very excited. And then everyone left, and then everyone was online, and then kind of expecting that would be the same experience for the students because they had the LMS and they could, write an announcement and that, oh, yep, see, they're learning online. So even internally, if you're intentionally designing for online, there's a way to go to maybe convince your colleagues that not all online learning looks the same. And it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work from learning designers, from media producers to, IT support, EdTech partnerships, and academics to learn how to teach and facilitate learning online. I think that the pandemic, while most universities really were not ready, it has given them a bit of a wake-up call. I think at the same time, universities are establishing an accord. The interim report came out a few months ago and really was signalling the growth that is going to be needed in the sector extraordinary numbers of students in a pretty short time frame. They can't all fit on their campuses. So I think people have got to start really, looking at online learning very, very, very seriously and intentionally designing all forms of learning and very, quickly. I think we can really harness technology to help us do that. I know that we're looking at investing in our own developed AI co-pilots for use for learning designers and curriculum designers to support the kind of quicker products to market. Universities are big, slow beasts. Getting a new course accredited can take years. I'm not joking. It's usually even a 2-year time frame to get a new course accredited. I think that's universities turning to shorter forms of learning. They are quicker to get to market. They're based on industry skill shortages, so we can play a part in upskilling, reskilling for the future. Also, universities, I think, need to focus on the student experience for online learning. They need to, it still need to meet the same needs of our students, but it can be quite different for an online student. Belonging is really important, international students particularly, but also belonging might look a little bit different for an online student than an on-campus student, than an international student. They need to be supported. They need to be made feel welcome. How do we do that? We design that into the student journey. We build inclusive design principles when designing our courses, so that people feel that they can see themselves in that course rather than learning about another person's life. They need to be engaging. Going back to what you were talking about, Adam, we can't just have some text and a video on a screen and call that online learning. It needs to be active. They need to be doing, practicing. So we also have a duty to look after our students' wellbeing, and particularly our international students that are here on campus. They've come a long way. They don't have access to their regular supports. They're learning academic English. We really need to be looking after their wellbeing as well.
Thanks, Emily. So that's a very good point. I'm wondering about the different experiences that international students and domestic students may have. If the university is planning to expand enrollment and some that's going to be online, the international students have to study face-to-face for their visa requirements. Do you foresee a time when international students might be studying online as well, but in Australia? Or do you see the international or the domestic enrollments being primarily in online programs? And you have domestic students studying online, international students studying face-to-face. How do you see this shaping up?
I really hope we don't separate it out like that. Like the rich rewards that international students bring to domestic students' lives, the diversity. I can't imagine the time that anyone would want one kind of mode of learning for domestic and one. So I think that even because online learning is not allowed for international students, then we kind of do a blanket. Okay, well, we're not doing online for the on-campus classes. I think that international students obviously do require different levels, types of support. Talked about, I actually can't imagine how difficult it must be trying to learn, academic English at the same time as your discipline, at the same time as trying to make friends, or find a place to live in a housing crisis, or afford to buy food and where to go, all at once. It must be extraordinarily difficult. So I think that, international students that come here are extraordinarily brave, and they need to be celebrated. And yeah, and that universities have a duty of care to ensure their success. So, yeah.
And I just add, and based on the quilt data, they need more support.
Yeah.
What you've just described is what they're receiving. And clearly, when you look at the accord and you look at what's going on there, not enough is being invested in the student experience for international and domestic students. And in fact, today, in the Senate, they are debating the second reading of the student support legislation, which I believe is almost certain to pass, and at which point every university is going to have to put in writing what they do, and they're going to have to do it. They might get fined $18,720 per student. So that might change the calculus.
Good point. So I guess we've discussed quite a bit about how more of a human-centered approach, increasing engagement among students, how critical that is. So I wanted to discuss a bit about the steps being taken to achieve this from, I guess, a learning design and curriculum design perspective, whilst also looking at the role of AI in transforming the learning experience and how you see that playing out. So maybe, Emily, I'll just start with you briefly. If you can share a bit about UTS's approach to learning design and some of the work that you're doing in that area.
Sure. Well, I think probably talked about this a lot, but the learning needs to be intentionally designed, and it needs to be designed for that connection, whether it be connection to each other, to teachers, to industry, to the world around us. It needs to be connected and not kind of disjointed, people sitting behind a screen or sitting alone in class. People do not learn well in those kind of environments. We've got a fairly newly designed learning design framework, which is a tool for our learning designers, 42 standards. And some of those standards are about, for example, making sure there is teacher presence. That can come across in a variety of different ways, but people aren't going to log into their, LMS and read a whole lot of text and then be asked to answer questions. That's not going to be a great learning experience. They need to be heard. They need to be provided timely feedback. They need to be able to discuss and actively engage, practice. A lot of that can be augmented with technology. Just being inside a learning management system is a huge beast. But we have got a few in-house built tools that have been quite successful, particularly with feedback for formative assessments. And this has been quite successful for our international students as well. It's kind of low stakes. It's not tied to assessment. It is a practice tool. It's linked to their practice activities, and it's an writing analytical system that provides real-time feedback and as much as you want. It doesn't write for you. It only provides feedback and just kind of indicates where you could make improvements or actually, what's looking good. Yeah. I think that direct feedback from your teaching staff and your peers, and actually even to be able to reflect yourself is more valuable, but I think there's a good ecosystem of different types of feedback, and it really needs to be engaging and support learners to succeed.
Yeah, definitely. And Jack, I guess from your perspective, What role do you see AI playing in this? And I guess what are you doing to innovate on learning experience?
Yeah, thanks, Adam. First, I'd say a couple things. One is I may have a slightly darker view on AI than some of the folks, maybe in this room or certainly at universities. And I'll just say that I've been listening, reading things that can take you down some rabbit holes. But if anyone's come across the Center for Humane Technology and their Your Undivided Attention podcast, if you're in a really good ebullient mood, you should listen because it'll take you down a notch or two. But here's my concern. AI in higher education should stand for two things, in my view, in the following priority. First, it should stand for academic integrity. That's what it needs to stand for if a degree is going to mean anything in the world. Second, artificial intelligence, although I still don't like the word intelligence because it is not intelligence. It is certainly not thinking, but it gives the impression that it's doing that. I have not seen all of the AI that everyone's excited about and impressed by. None of it's built for education. It's all built for commercial purposes. It's all built to make tons and tons of money from advertising, from all sorts of influencing campaigns, all sorts of things, not education. So when you go and you plug it into your adaptive writing tool, or you say, have at it, kids, maybe you don't need to write, maybe you can just become a prompt engineer and an editor and a fact checker. You don't just diminish education, you destroy it. I mean, and I've been surprised and disappointed to hear so many otherwise highly educated, intelligent people openly embrace that form of AI simply while ignoring the academic integrity part, simply because suddenly what was contract cheating last year now looks like it's ubiquitous, free, and undetectable. You have those three things, and why not open the floodgates and let everyone become stupid? I think that's a dreadful, dreadful idea. So we have to call these things out and be clear about them. Otherwise, we will find ourselves in a grievous place. Now, with that said, it won't surprise you that we are investing enormously in AI. With that said, we are investing in academic integrity and artificial intelligence. We are investing in tools that require students to think, that require students to learn, and that do not have guardrails. They have fully encased containers to prevent hallucinations, to prevent mistakes, and to mandate that students learn. If you don't do that, what's the point of getting a degree? Because when they come to apply for a job at your company or my company or at UTS, Emily's not going to be able to hire them. You're not going to be able to hire them. I won't be able to hire them. They will be unemployable.
Thanks, Jack.
I'm happy to be proved wrong, please.
So actually, we do have some things in common there as well. So just from what we're doing at Open Learning, we've been investing heavily in AI as well, the artificial intelligence kind, and a little bit of academic integrity. But the way that we've been looking at it is for the educators, as a tool for educators. Because one of the great challenges that we've seen is around being able to scale learning design. And if you look at a lot of the courses running at the university, I would say a very small percentage have the kind of learning design expertise and attention that Emily, your team would bring. And it's the reality that it takes a lot of effort to design a high quality course. It can take months or years sometimes to build a program with the right kind of learning design, the right activities, the right engagement, because you can't rely on spontaneous interaction that you get when you're in a classroom. You have to design the experiences to create that interaction. So what we've been working on at Open Learning, and what we've rolled out to all of our customers already, is a suite of learning design patterns that are powered by AI, which are designed by our learning designers and generate different types of activities, such as reciprocal teaching, role-playing, case studies, a whole range of different types of interaction that you can include in your courses. Now, that is not designed to be perfect from the get-go. It uses GPT-4. We didn't build our large language model. But it's meant to be reviewed and meant to assist the learning designer in coming up with this content activities. And interestingly, from what we've seen, while the accuracy of all of the content produced is not always there, probably 80 or 90% depending on the subject, the actual learning design and the structure based on the extensive prompts that we've created is actually as good or better than many learning designers that we've worked with. And one of the reasons for that is because it's hard for a learning designer or anyone to have a lot of cross-disciplinary knowledge. Being able to apply learning design techniques to a particular subject matter is quite challenging. But AI does make a good attempt at it. Not perfect, but good to save you a lot of effort. So I think we're quite excited about the opportunities. That said, we're not providing it to students. We believe students should also learn. We don't want to see a world where students are using AI to do courses designed by AI. Not sure anyone really benefits from that. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say, absolutely. I think you're smart. I mean,
Thank you.
the technology. Yeah. Well, almost. Okay, I'll qualify that. I think academics, even deep experts in their fields, are far more easily fooled by hallucinations in AI than we would all like to think. You're an expert in your field. I know certain things very, very well, and I've had to research things that AI has manufactured out of thin air and I've spoken with researchers who had the exact same experience and engineers who have said, if you do not know with 100% certainty what the answer is to the question you're about to ask, do not ask it because your potential for being fooled is there. And cross-disciplinary is exactly where that kind of a problem emerges. So you can spend as much time fact-checking and digging into what you've generated as you can generating it. So I don't know that it's always a time saver, but it certainly makes a good-looking first draft, especially late at night.
I'd agree with that. We've got some questions from the audience on Slido, and I guess feel free to post any more as well. I'll just go through a couple of them, and maybe we'll touch on these briefly now too. The first one by votes is, do we actually have the skills distributed across industry to create amazing digital experiences for all relevant programs at all institutions? Who is teaching the teachers? Do we have the mastery in this skill? Well, I guess AI may or may not be the answer to that one, but do you want to add anything, Emily? What are your thoughts?
I think we definitely do have the skills. Although anyone's a learning designer, learning designers actually quite popular at the moment and sometimes hard to secure. But I think we do have a skilled workforce and that we can do it. But we do need to harness EdTech to do so at scale. So yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I think that it has to be done together.
I think for sure, but I think the thing that we don't do well at all is throw out stuff that's not working. I think we are terrible at stopping doing things. If we looked around and are honest with ourselves about the things we do that are just wastes of time, we would free up a lot of time and a lot of money to do the new things that would make students so much happier. Right now, we feel like our hands are tied because, we don't have any new money for that idea or that new project or that new team member because we have to keep doing all these other things. Never mind if they're working or not, who knows? So yeah, it's the possibilities there. I'm not sure the bravery is.
Good point. I guess it goes into this next question, which is, these are both anonymous, by the way, so no one wanted to put their name to these. So to me, being best in class globally at digital education and experience represents a huge opportunity for Australian institutions and will help attract the best international students. A true leveler against the old establishment brands. Is that fair? Well, if I understand this question correctly, then I think there is an opportunity, or saying there might be an opportunity for Australian institutions to expand globally if they can get this right.
Yeah, there was a dream. Some government official talked about having 100 million people studying in or via Australian
AIE
institutions.
2025, I think it was.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's not happening. But right, it could happen. But are we on a pathway for that to happen? It doesn't feel like it. It doesn't feel like there's anywhere near the level of investment in digital delivery and beautiful student-centric design that would be needed to get to 10% of that goal at this point.
I think we're on our way. At UCS, we are investing in it. From learning design frameworks, the student experience, implementing a new framework there, looking at the whole journey, looking at learning experiences. I think that we are getting there, but we also now are going to be required to do everything at scale. And that's the next kind of, can this scale what we've done so far? So I think that'll be the next kind of.
Yeah. When we build the Frank Gehry building of online learning, that's when we will have 100 million people. But right now, the Frank Gehry building is just the Frank Gehry building.
Well, I think we don't really know how many students there are studying at Australian institutions globally online. 100 million sounds like a lot, but it might be achievable. Just at Open Learning, we have 3.5 million learners on the platform globally. About 20% are in Australia, the rest are around the world, mostly studying at overseas institutions in their own country. But we do have hundreds of thousands studying at Australian institutions online in some form. Not degree programs, mind you. I think this is probably more of a reflection of lifelong learning, short courses and micro-credentials, where those numbers may be more feasible. But I think it does represent a large opportunity. I think as critical as we may be sometimes of our own work and our own education system, every country is going through a similar challenge at the moment, from what I can tell. I don't know about every country, but certainly all the ones that we work in and all the institutions we deal with around the world have similar thoughts around their own institutions in their own countries. And I think that speaks to the challenge that we all face in the sector, which is that while people do want to invest in online, and I agree the level of investment is nowhere near where it should be. Maybe that's a bit self-serving for both of us being in the EdTech space, but that's the reality. If you want to deliver a high quality online experience, you should spend as much as you would for face-to-face. At the same time, a lot of international students are saying that they want face-to-face on campus in Australia. And that also skews the level of investment required as well. I think that's a big challenge that we face, and I guess institutions are struggling to balance those competing demands in some ways. So we've only got a couple minutes left, so I just wanted to finish off with a question here from the audience, which says, this leads to the session title, are we producing first-class humans or second-class robots? Yeah. So maybe we'll end on this one, and maybe Jack, your final thoughts, and then we'll go to Emily.
Look, we haven't, the robots aren't running the asylum yet, thankfully. but if we're not careful, we'll let them in, and they will take charge. And some people might think that's okay temporarily until it's too late. So I think we have to remember that if we're not building human capabilities, if we aren't making smarter people, then we're not doing our jobs, and that's everybody in the whole sector. And I keep coming back to something that wonderful educator named Tracy Brettag, who you may have known her. She's died prematurely just before the pandemic, but she was a great Australian researcher in academic integrity, and she really unpacked that whole issue. And one of the things she discovered in her research was that one of the main reasons students cheat is when they feel like their institution doesn't really value them, that meaning or that belonging or that presence isn't really there. And so students really who feel it may cheat. It's really cutting a corner. If I feel that my institution isn't concerned about my learning, then I might not be concerned about complying with the rules. And we have to figure out a way to make sure students stay at the center of that learning journey, and what we have right now is a massified higher education system in Australia. We have 40 enormous institutions where students are numbers. And sure, every student needs to have a number, but somebody needs to know their name, and somebody needs to know that they are cared for and that they matter and that their problems are problems that can be solved, and that by working with somebody, with some human connections, and not just with robots, that will make their lives better. So if we don't do that, we are going to find ourselves in pain.
Yeah, I don't know what universities you've been talking to, but I think that, I mean, we're like legally obligated to care for our students at the very least. But also, we need to be able to assure learning. We can't, you know, pretend that, oh yeah, they've come to class, they must have learned. We've never been able to do that. We need to assess, and we need to make sure that that is, the students' work. I think, though, the use of AI is happening, whether we like it or not. So if we want to make things available for students to use, or not make things available for students to use, they will use off-the-shelf tools. So what we're trying to concentrate on, Microsoft Word is got Copilot. We're not probably going to turn that on. Where we've set up, AI ethics boards, rigorous approvals to get any kind of development work in that space. We've got the Human Computer Ethics Centre at UTS. So it's taken very seriously, that it's not just willy-nilly, yeah, here's your essay. We do have to change the way that we assess to ensure academic integrity. We'll probably have to change what we learn, though, also. AI is not just being used in education. AI is being used in every industry. So our job as a university is to equip our students for their future career. They're going to be using AI in there. So they need to be able to learn how to use it ethically, effectively. And so what that looks like will be different in, each discipline. But it'll be targeted, and hopefully we'll be building our own in-house AI agents to lead the way.
Thank you. Well, for what it's worth, I'm very optimistic about AI, and I'm quite excited about the opportunities that it presents to enable people and institutions to design and build things that they couldn't really do before, or at least as efficiently or as quickly. And the work that we've been doing so far, I've been quite impressed with the ability of AI to generate learning activities and content for courses that I know would not have been there otherwise. And the choice is not between, an academic building some fantastic course content, meticulously checking it over, designing great activities, and generating it with AI. It's usually the choice between no content and a video, and well-structured content generated by AI and reviewed by a human. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. A lot of challenges go with that. We're very early in the development of AI, and the reality is that it's here and it's going to get much better. And the students will be using it whether we like it or not. The academics will also be using it whether we like it or not. And I think we're going to have to try and find a way to at least direct some of that development in the most positive way possible. But if we can, I think we've got a great opportunity to improve the quality of education. So with that, I'd like to thank Emily and Jack for being here with me today. And let's give them a round of applause. So thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Adam, Emily, and Jack. That was a very fascinating discussion. So thank you very much for giving us your time today. We'll jump straight into our next lot of case studies. That's a runaway mic. So with that, I'd like to invite Mark Sampson from Sanofi to present. I'll hand over to you, Mark.
I'll make it go. That way. Cool. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. Thank you. That was fascinating. I'm going to go off script straight away. The first 10 minutes will be an AI-free zone. No, I lied, actually, it won't be. So that final section there about students being numbers, not people. The case study I'm going to talk about is mainly around Central Queensland University, but actually 10 days before the pandemic caused a lockdown at Western Sydney and their real university, they'd implemented Student Pulse, the software I'm here to talk about. And they'd done a survey 2018 where students were saying, I feel like a number, everything's transactional, there's no love. And in September 2020, 6 months after they'd put Pulse in to support what was initially 1,200 students, and then it became 7,500 students 10 days later, and then it became 12,000 students shortly after that, was the students were saying, I didn't expect this type of support. It feels like I'm part of a family. And the transformation was quite stark. And that wasn't because the teaching and learning had changed. It's because the way students felt, the university felt about them had changed. And it wasn't because they had more staff doing it. It's because they were using data to change the way they engage with students. And that's largely what we try to do for a living, is to try to use as many sources of data, including the students themselves, to create an environment in which the students feel connected. They feel like someone gives a damn. I'll paraphrase what a 50-year-old mature student said. I felt like you gave a shit. Yeah, and that was it. Somewhat direct, but I liked her for that one to say. So back to the bit which isn't off script. The whole idea of what we're trying to do and what I'm going to talk to you about is what's remarkable about education at the moment, whether it's TAFE, whether it's VET, whether it's higher education or private, whatever, is that everyone seems to be fighting for students. It's a dogfight out there. And you've got caps on undergrad, you've got challenges with international, you've got no caps on postgrad, and everybody's out there trying to fight the same numbers. So the challenges of recruitment, retention, and achievement are the challenges that everyone focuses on. And that's really what this whole journey relationship management thing is about. I've seen universities and TAFEs spend tens of millions of dollars on CRMs, and they only deal with the first part of the student journey. They're largely pipeline management systems, but they're called CRMs because apparently that's what you've got to do. But they're not, they're transactional. It's like an emotional balance sheet. Yeah, and we're trying to move beyond that, where you actually build what is genuinely a relationship, or purports to be a relationship, or feels like a relationship with students. And that's what Student Pulse is largely about. And how we do that is we extract as much data as possible from as many systems as you'll give us those data from. And we try and use that data to work out who to engage with, and why, and when, and how. And then the language you use to talk to students reflects the language that they will understand. It's not the language you'll speak, because you're all clever and academic, and the students aren't yet. So the language has to change, the style has to change. And then when we tell them something, we ask them about it, well, we get some feedback. It's an outrageous idea, I know, but you actually get the feedback, and then even worse, you do something with it. Yeah? I'm sorry, heresy. I know. It hasn't gone through a subcommittee. It hasn't gone through a working group. Yeah, we actually just immediately go, the student says they want this, let's do it. And you don't need a person to do that, because that's very easy, and no AI is involved. Okay? And once we've got that stuff, we can analyze what they're saying, we can work out their sentiment, because they've told us in the answers they've given us to the questions we've asked them. It's not in notes, it's in a database where we can analyze it. And then you can do predictive risk modeling of it. Because actually, if I asked you what the risks were of retention or conversion or attrition or mental health or welfare, you tell me. There'd be 80% agreement in this room what the key risk factors are. And so we can model that, and then you can just supplement it with real data. And then you can correlate all that stuff, and you can work out what it means. And you might even actually do something systemically, institutionally about it. So that's what Pulse does. And just diagrammatically, those who like pretty pictures, and this is a very ugly picture, not a pretty one, because I did it, and I'm awful. If you imagine you've got your student record system, your learning management system, your CRM, your ID cards, your library system, your whatever the systems you want to give me, your accommodation system, et cetera, et cetera.
you can take data from that, and in our institutions, that varies between every 24 hours, and most recently, we take data from 5 systems every half hour. So we're talking about near real-time data feeds from transactional administration and learning management systems. That goes into Pulse. Inside Pulse, we then have a clock running, which will automatically analyze and profile and risk analyze those data. And it'll target different people for different reasons. You can decide the reasons. I don't do that bit. Yeah, you know your students, or at least you say you do. And so you can work out what you want from them, why you want from them. You target them, you then generate a range of engagements, communications, which are two-way. But they might be one-way. Universities are great at broadcasting, they're not so good at receiving. Yeah, and so if we generate those in microsurveys and smart forms and call guides and meeting guides, and we push them out for face-to-face discussions and text messages and phone calls and emails, and we embed them in student portals and LMSs. The student doesn't know that something in the LMS comes from a different system. It just says, hey Bob, how you feeling? Are you struggling? Are things okay? And as they answer yes and no, it adapts. You say, I'm feeling crappy. They'll go, oh, I'm sorry about that. How can I help? Is it study? Is it something else? Whatever. And every time they answer a question, they're telling us stuff that we now know that we can act on. It's really not revolutionary. It's very simple. It's called listening. Yeah? And then the stuff can come in. So I don't have to be asked. I can walk in and say, I want to talk to somebody about so-and-so. I can send an email. And inside that email, there's a whole batch of information, which is the subtext of what they actually mean. And so on the back of all of those things, we can do sentiment analysis, both structured and text. And we can take all that feedback and we know about the students. Inside Pulse, we know all about the students, every single student. What does that mean? Well, the more we know them, the more we can time the right interactions at the right time in the right way, the better it's going to be. This is the sort of thing we do. This is a postgraduate engagement flow at CQU, very quickly, because that's going far too fast. A student gets application, that goes into Pulse. Student gets an offer, 72 hours later, they get a text message that they haven't accepted. Yeah, the text message goes to the student, 48 hours later, they get a phone call, which is generated by Pulse, which is personalized to them. Up to 3 phone calls. If there's no answer, we know they're cold. Yeah, you can then leave them or follow them up later on. If there is an answer, we take the details. All of this is being fed into a CRM in real time. If it's postgraduate, they want to be loved by somebody posh, a professor, a doctor, not just somebody in student engagement, will refer them. And heaven forbid we get academics to make phone calls to students. We tell them what to say, don't worry. We don't put them out there wild. And then that stuff gets through. Now, all of that stuff at CQU, that's what the contact board looks like. I haven't got time to talk you through it. Take this bit. This is postgraduate. So in 2021, the average offer to accept was 33 days, and accepted role was 112 days. Think on that. Now, for term 2023, it's 16 days and 1 day. That means they're onboarding people 48 days earlier. That sense of belonging is created in that 48-day gap. That sense of onboarding, of connection, international students or postgraduate students. These figures up here are for domestic undergrads. So using the same methodology, they did 8.5% more enrollments on 6% fewer applications. That's broadly speaking a net 12% improvement in their things. No more staff. There were no more staff involved in this. This was automations and intelligence and stuff like that. So that's the positive impact. By the way, Western Sydney retention in international students improved 1.4% on international students only, so it can be done. The other thing which they did was to work out the behavior of students based on what they said and then what they did. And Wes, who produced all this lovely stuff, Wes Eveline, brilliant bloke, not persevered and persevered. Those who said they were feeling not so good and then withdrew, and those who said they were not so good and then stayed past the census date. Anything before the census date, I know you ignore, but I don't because it's money. Yeah, you need to be counting those students then. So based on those things, we can then look at the type of students who persevered, what made them persevere, how often did they log on to the learning management system, how many other services did they use, start to understand the behaviors that drive those who persevere and those who don't. For those who don't, where did they go? Why did they go there? So this sort of feedback is really crucial. And I was delighted that Jack mentioned the Higher Education Support Amendment, which is going through its reading today. I'm doing some sessions at the moment with Avondale. Bloody hell, these things are annoying. Thank you. With Avondale University. And Avondale is a very small specialist university, Adventist University, and they put Pulse in only about 12, 13 weeks ago. But already we're integrated with Marketo, with Callista, with JR, Job Ready, and with Moodle. And we're also pushing data out into their systems. Now, critically, what we're doing with them is to start to anticipate that requirement, the requirement that covers every aspect of the Amendment Act to support your students, not just their academic support, not their accommodation or their finance, but their mental health and well-being as well, their social well-being. Because the students don't differentiate between learning support and other support. They don't separate it like your departments do. They just see it as the university looking after them. And so the sort of thing we're doing there is we're producing analysis models. So this is an analysis model which is looking at the risks associated with learners on that particular course. And we're working out the value, because you did that to CFO, they like that. They like numbers. $147,000 at risk. They'll sit up and take notice. And then you're ranking the students by that risk. You're saying this student is most likely to drop out based on the various predictions. So biographic, learning, non-learning, are they carers, how far do they travel to university and stuff like that. And then you can look at the risk trajectory over time. We run risk models every day. Western Sydney are getting 10,000 risk scores every day. And they prioritize their engagements based on those risks. And then you can look at Student 350 view. Obviously, you can't know everything about a student. Okay? So anyone who says Student 360, they're misleading you. Never believe it. And you can look at all their personal information. And as you go through, you can start to look at, that's their enrollment, their applications, their courses. Then you've got their units of study and all the summary of that. And this is the first point of AI, the little flying saucer up in the top right-hand corner. When you click that, that will give you a summary of what the database says. So my large language model is my database. I don't have to go to the outside world because I'm analyzing data inside my world. Safe, it's secure, and so on. So then you can start to produce other interesting things, like who looks after their students' learning styles? Kolb, Honey and Mumford. Who does that stuff? That's a student learning style that can be done in about 2 minutes. Then AI will analyze that for you and for the student. Imagine students understanding their own learning style. Imagine if you did it with sentiment. That's a text sentiment model. And that's a scored sentiment model. That's the AI analysis of it. So people don't have to interpret that. They push the button and the software will do it for them. That's a good use of AI. I mean, it's simple, but it's effective. So ultimately, you can then actually integrate learner support management into the system. This information is out to academics, so you're joining up pastoral care, mental health care, all the other support with academic support and care. And you're controlling who can see what. And then you can start to have discussions between members of staff on holistic support across the whole student journey. So that's the whole thing about this. I know I've got red there, Sarah, I'm sorry. But the key thing here is this can be incremental. You don't need the whole data set first off. People massively over-engineer what they think they need to do this simple stuff. Yeah, very simple stuff, way wrong. You can have a positive impact on the source systems. Your data quality in universities is usually pretty rubbish. And we know because we get most of it. Point out lots of holes, and that starts to do a virtuous circle of data quality. And it can be near real time. So that sort of process is the sort of thing that I want people to think about when they're thinking about student care, not the quality of the learning materials or whether it's AI generated or not, but actually how the students feel as people connected to the university. Thank you very much indeed. Questions?
Thank you, Mark. Let me just get back up front.
I think I beat you to it there.
Mike?
Yeah.
I know.
I saw the red and I just couldn't bear the threat.
I appreciate it. Let's get some questions up from Slido. Okay, so we are running a little behind, so I might just give you one question. What were the challenges in getting hold of all the data you needed to know who to target and why?
Universities are really protective of their data. It's a very strange thing. They're protective internally. They'll still fight about who can see what internally. And is it IT who's in control of it, or is it who looks after the data inside the LMS? Why is it difficult to say did the student log on or not? Who controls whether the data on the network is successful? Why is it challenging to know the students on campus? So part of what we spend our time doing is navigating the politics of the university and working out where the power lies. If it lies with IT, you're going to love IT. If it lies with somebody else, you still have to love IT because they're the enablers and they're in control. You have to get permission from other people to do it. So most of the time, people over-engineer the challenge. They make it more complicated than it needs to be. Secondly, few organizations that I've worked with have an inclination to be cooperative. They're usually more challenging than they are.
Okay. Well, we do have a couple more questions, but we have just run out of time. So thank you very much, Mark. We appreciate you giving us your time today. Now, next presenter, welcome back. Oh, yes, thank you very much, Mark. Now, I'll be welcoming back to stage Jack Goodman to give us a case study on Studios's recent partnership with Massey University, I believe. So welcome back, Jack.
Fantastic. In case I haven't stirred the pot enough already. I'm going to just present a little case study on a platform we've been developing for several years. It's called Student Connect, and it's all about building these peer connections, which we all know are essential for belonging, mattering, and integrity and success. Is it going to work? Sorry. We were going to try and have a live little seminar with people from Massey, New Zealand today, but the tech is not up to it. So we recorded something yesterday, nearly live, and I'll walk you through what we did, and then I'm happy to answer questions. In any event, so Massey is obviously based in New Zealand, largely online student cohort, and we put together a partnership with them in which they were really seeking to find a way to support new students studying online, particularly in social work and social work related fields, and trying to figure out how to help them enter their degrees more smoothly, more successfully by connecting them with more experienced senior students who were selected and invited to participate as mentors in the program. And by the way, we're all compensated for their time. This was something where they were professionally trained, onboarded, and then paid for the mentoring that they provided. So the challenge here, and this is something that's taken years actually for us to do, much to my and my colleagues' disappointment, as exceptionally complicated to do. But if you think about that video, which I know very nice and beautiful and clear, it was also very transparent. And one of the problems that we've had with solving this problem is how do you make the technology completely transparent? How do you get people to ask questions? How do you get students who are new and uncertain, people like Emily's describing, they're brand new, who knows what their backgrounds are, what their needs are, what their circumstances are, but they're just not sure that they belong. And how do you get them to participate? Um, how do we overcome that initial reluctance to ask a question? Putting your hand up in class is one of the bravest things you can do, which is why almost nobody does it. Certainly not on the first day or the first week, and that's something that needs to happen. The first time students either set foot on campus or log into an LMS, which is effectively clicking on a campus, they have questions. And how do we help them ask that question? And what we know from all the quilt data, again, is that there's a low sense of belonging. Sorry, not on the camera. There we go. Now I'm on the camera. Hello. Sorry about that. What we know is that students, the sense of belonging that they report in learner engagement and all of the associated questions that are part of the student experience survey reveal that they don't have a great sense of belonging. And we need to do something about that. And so that's what Massey was keen to explore with us. So I've got a little video here which explains the solution. If this works, great. If it doesn't, I'll tell you what Jill, our product lead engineer designer, did.
Little technology windows that would help build that rapport flow effort. And that was something that we learned a lot about through the journey, that students feel that anxiety. Anything that technology could do to just help them start up that conversation with the mentor is something a big piece of the solution this time around. So that when they got that conversation going, it just felt like it was a natural part of the process. And what that did was sort of set the scene for a really human connection, where the kind of secondary and the rapport between the student mentors at the forefront. And it just meant that it opened the doorway to sort of all kinds of questions between the student and the student mentor around things like the first day, where do I find things, all the way through, just on the day through the assignments, and then at the end of the semester, things like what subject should I pick. So we really found that once we got the technology to do the heavy lifting, the human connection came to the forefront.
And this is Penny Hay. So she's Massey's director of student success.
Jill, and then we really got to the brief about what we do as an institution and student population, and a lot of them study part-time at study around have lots of other things going on. And we know for those students, sometimes with anxiety coming into the university environment are heightened. That sense of isolation of not necessarily being on campus is surrounded by our students who look and things like them can really be amplified as well. So especially this year, as we've had kind of the rise of asynchronous messaging between our mentors, is that whatever time of day those students feel like taking care of themselves is their schedule. We've got really high confidence that will be a triage and our mentors, and that they can meet with them on a student basis to help decode this program and make sure that they feel understood and supported and they feel alongside themselves and legitimate as students and part of our community. whenever they do get it. And that's what our students and our mentors face in that environment as well. So it's also exactly to get referrals back into our own services, it's always a delight to work at a just go to and see what's going on as we have to and work towards getting through that.
We've got a couple of mentors here. This is Kelly. She's a final year social work student. She's one of the senior mentors working with students.
Yeah, I think initially, sort of in the first semester, a lot of students were quite nervous about being connected via voice calls, and so it did seem as though once they realised it was going to be a voice call, that sort of hang up and try and send a message. And I think that was someone didn't even have a question in mind. It really was more about just sort of connecting, and I guess sort of having someone to check in with that they were on the right track. And I think, it felt like it was almost like they felt like they didn't have a specific question to ask, then, it sounds like a waste of a call. But actually, once they realised that it was okay just send a message to say, I've got 3 assignments due and I'm feeling a little bit stressed. I think just to have someone else going, I remember that actually, completely normal. And so, I was able to build rapport in that way. And I think this year with the messaging sort of being the first line of contact, I think I had a lot more students messaging and at all times of the day and night. I think that was the other thing is that, distance students and a large contingent of distance students that we don't all study within those 9 to 5 sort of hours. So someone might say that then that's because it's 2 a.m. and you kind of reference something and they're not thinking that straight away. The next thing at 5 o'clock when they decide to pick up the study again, and what the answer they're waiting for.
And by the way, she's a single mom, full-time student, and full-time. So isn't that incredible what she's doing, right? Respect. This is Tamsin. So she's a second-year social work student. Another one of the mentors. Listen to this.
Because as all the stresses they had, I could relate to completely, and it was really validating for me as well, because I was like, okay, not only my experiences, I've been a distance student my entire university experience, which has been a challenge for sure, and I've felt isolated and like I haven't belonged to the university. And honestly, being a student mentor representing Massey has been one of the biggest experiences in my belonging sort of journey to Massey, and talking to other Massey students as a fellow Massey student in a really authentic way where we can actually be honest with each other and say, oh, we actually struggle with this and we struggle with this, because you don't always want to admit it in front of your tutors. So like the Zoom that you have, you don't want to say, oh, this is really stressful. We actually need to retain, and that was what stuck out to me in this voice call. They were really stressed about their full-time work and doing all the weekly readings, and I just sort of gave them some tips because in my first couple of years I was working full-time as well, almost full-time, and I was like, well, this is what worked for me, and I found it really useful, and they went away from that voice call and like, you taught me so much, like I'm definitely going to use those tips, and it felt really good, and like really reassuring that someone will benefit from the same way I study. Because sometimes you look back and you're like, have I done enough? Do I know enough? So it's really nice to know that someone is actually going to benefit from learning the same thing that I am.
So that's what peer connection and peer support looks like when you make it as transparent and easy to use as possible on a mobile device, the desktop, asynchronous and synchronous VoIP capabilities, and you do it with heart and feeling. And there's 4 seconds left for questions. Perfect.
I'll give you at least 2 minutes, Jack. How's that?
All right.
So I've got one question here. I've actually got 2, but let's ask this one. What's happening right now that's driving the need for scaled digital peer connection?
Well, 1.5 million students in Australia would be one of those things, and that's just Australia. That's not the UK. That's not Canada. That's not New Zealand. The other geographies we work in. You know, what's driving this is it was so fascinating. What I love about these interviews is that these are the mentors, not the learners. This is the impact that the mentoring has on the sense of belonging that the mentors have and how they're valuing their experience. There's a huge amount of research that's been done about the impact of peer mentoring in terms of the benefits for students, for the mentees. The challenge has been, how do we build this up at scale? How do we do it not on campus, not at fixed times, not, with that sort of on-demand flexibility that students expect in their daily lives and really need this to fit around everything else. So I think what this has really underscored for us is that whole concept of that technology acceptance model, which I think we often lose sight of in ed tech, which is that any tech that's going to work has to do 2 things. It has to solve an identified problem. That's the easy part. But it also has to be perceived to be easy to use. And that's the super hard part. That's what we've been working on so hard. And every time we think we've simplified it, we have to simplify it more. Otherwise, it won't get used. And I think we finally figured out how to make something get used, and you can hear it from the students.
It's so valuable to hear directly from some of your mentors and users. I will note for those watching online, there was some audio issues for people listening to the video, so maybe we can share the recording or something after the fact
Absolutely.
for those that want to revisit that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jack. Really appreciate it. Having you again on
Thank you.
stage.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right, now moving into the final segment for the day. I would like to welcome back to stage again David Linky from Edugrowth and Cherie Diaz from Western Sydney Uni to tell us about the EdTech Innovation Network program. Really exciting program. I'm going to leave it all to David though to explain, so I don't get anything anything wrong. And a reminder as well, Slido as well, questions for people.
Thanks very much. Let me get going. Why don't we take a seat here, Sherry? We know that if we can build connection and substantial and real connection between education technology companies, education providers, researchers, we can have an impact on growing edtech companies faster. We can solve solutions, or we can solve problems for institutions that are looking to solve problems. So we've done a bunch of work around this concept and idea and thought pattern. We want to be able to connect these 4 actors in a scaffolded framework. So some of you may be familiar with the triple helix model of innovation that you see across many verticals, where you're seeing researchers, generally within universities, you're seeing entrepreneurs, and you're also seeing typically government actors. Education requires triple helix plus. You've got to have the face-to-face, the person in the classroom, the person in the lecture hall, the person in the tutorial, who are actually engaged in that process as well, because otherwise your innovation will not work in real time, and you'll actually get a much different structured approach. So what we want to do is we want to build a framework of connecting all these people, and we want to give them a role of how they see themselves engaging in that network. It brings together 4 components. It borrows off some known models from around the world. So we've seen digital promise in the United States in the K-12 school space, and we've seen the University Innovation Alliance in the higher ed space. It's about ensuring that there's a set of defined actions so people can actually move through that framework. It's about thought leadership, co-design, and a shared understanding. And I think I'm going to give you some context of where the thinking came from in a second. And finally, it's about building a brand halo. I'm not going to attempt to read that. But what you're seeing from top to bottom is increased engagement, and from left to right, increased maturity of the institution that's participating. The most important takeaway here is that what we want edtech companies, education providers, researchers, and the educators themselves is to be able to see within there how they can add value to each other in building out co-design solutions. So you're not doing them in isolation. You're not building solutions that are not succeeding. You're actually building solutions that the customer that you're dealing with wants. I'm just going to skip ahead because I have to remind myself of which bit I'm going to do this in, because I can't see it here in front of me. And then we'll talk about the network and why it's going to exist. The background to this is in 2020, the Victorian government supported EduGrowth to build what we call the EdTech Innovation Alliance. And that project saw 9 Victorian EdTech companies partner with a Victorian education provider, an international one. And the result was $10 million worth of commercial activity for those companies and $12 million worth of capital raised. That has informed our thinking here. And we're actually delighted to be partnering Western Sydney University to launch the Higher Education EdTech Innovation Network. And I think I now go over to you, Cherie, for you to tell us why a network and some of the context around the education setting.
Sure. So in terms of my role at the university, I head up a 5-year strategic project, which is looking at how do we not only deliver fit for purpose education in a lifelong learning world, but also to test and measure and work out what that learning ecosystem looks like from the type of technology we use, the support provided, etc. And we have an EdTech Innovation Hub within my team, which is doing great work producing efficacy models and evidence of particular use cases, etc. But for us, it was about why do that in isolation or pretend that we're the only ones trying to tackle these challenges. The other piece that comes into it is, on the screen there, that's the starting point. In the last 4 weeks alone, we've had the Jobs and Skills Australia Roadmap, employment white paper, there's the new RTO standards for piloting. The list goes on.
There were 29 recommendations released today for digitising international education alone, and Jack mentioned something about second reading of a piece of stuff in Parliament as well. So this is the regulatory framework is not going to sleep, right?
Exactly. It's quickening in pace, and we're all in that dialogue of what's coming, what's here, what can we actually do today versus plan for tomorrow from a not just an education perspective, but a digital leadership perspective as well. And I think there's also a piece of, that's about the hub that we've got in the university. But I also have the benefit of having been within an ed company and knowing some of the challenges the company get asked for. What's the evidence? Or what data can you provide, etc. And then when you throw it back and say, what data are you trying to measure or what's your use case? Sometimes you don't get that answer. So it's about how do we collectively start to build common language, frameworks, and evidence for efficacy upwards.
The network will include startups, scale-ups, established businesses, the actual educators, education institutions, talking about universities, private providers, and vocational providers. There'll be, at some point, we'll talk about K-12 schools into the future. And it's really about trying to create some impact. And I think I wanted to talk about one or two of the components in the time that we've got, because what we're doing now, we've done a couple of times over about an hour and a half. So we're doing a mini version of this in 10 to 12 minutes. I think there isn't there. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What we want to be able to do is connect EdTech and education providers. We want to build deep connections between them, help to refine product market fit, and contribute to the education innovation conversation whilst building evidence records. It's very, very important that what we are talking about is building evidence records for EdTech products and their impact on the learners they're aiming to hit. if you are in the EdTech space, what you will see globally is a requirement is coming very, very quickly towards us that we will have to show the impact of your product on the user you're claiming to hit. And that's what you're going to start to see. You're going to start to see the most successful products that are being used and deployed are those that have got an evidence record. The framework itself is what a year might look like. So there'll be a community of action working together across a quarter. There might be some times where we do some mentoring and voice of educators so that EdTech companies early in their journey can actually go and meet some people who can say, hey, have you considered this framework? Have you considered this thing that's just come out? Have you thought about how the Accord might help you as an advantageous thing? We'll then have an opportunity to do some proof of concept. So these are small 8 to 12 week deployments where you can get a product into the market, you can use it with a customer in a real world situation. They can give you feedback to say, this makes sense or this doesn't make sense, or go and improve this piece. As the business scales and the product matures, you might start thinking about some research. And that's what we call a pilot program, where we now have a research mentor working with you who's going, okay, what are you going to try and measure? How are you going to collect that data? And how are you going to report the impact of that? And that's where we're starting to think about efficacy. And finally, we want to have as an open framework. So we want people to share their experiences at a symposium so that we can all learn from each other. Because it's important to know, like, what's one of the reasons why Western Sydney want to be involved in this program, Sherry?
There's many reasons, but one of them is the scalability of the work that we do, and also not having to test and trial everything ourselves versus collectively working through and drawing upon what's worked in a particular context. How do I quicken that pace between market testing or even going out to market to see what's possible and drawing upon the experiences of others and then being able to apply in practice?
We have got a limited time, so just for anybody who is interested here in the room or online, you can express interest in participating. We've still got a couple of briefings to go. There is a question on Slido, which is one challenge with research is that they work to longer time scales than EdTech companies. Does the program speed up the time to outcome? 100%. We are not talking about random control trial 3-year efficacy analysis where you're doing it across 43 different populations across 12 different locations. We are talking about you deploying your product with a provider who can see the need for that product and then measuring the impact of that product on that cohort. Remember, RCT trials in education are incredibly, incredibly challenging because as soon as you claim you have efficacy from an RCT, you will never deploy in the same environment with the same cohort of people in the same group of teaching professionals that deployed it. So it's actually, we're not looking at that. That is available, and obviously people do those sorts of that sort of work. How does this work with the New South Wales Government connect within the Innovation Network? That's a really great reminder that we actually are sitting here in New South Wales and we're here with Western Sydney University, and we are working with the New South Wales Government over 3 years. So EduGrowth has a partnership with the New South Wales Government to deliver a range of services. And we see this as a part of building the ecosystem both locally and internationally, because we know that this is all interconnected. I think that's all the questions that I have from Slido. So obviously we're around, but we are interested in speaking to people who are wanting to participate in the network. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, David and Sheree. And again, EOIs, welcome. You can find them on the website there. So that does bring us to an end to the EdTech Alley program. Thank you all so much for being here today, both in person and online. And thank you to all of today's speakers and presenters for making today possible. But also, again, I'd like to thank our partners, Study New South Wales and the team for their support. It's been incredible. And also thank Kate HQ as well for their work today. We really appreciate it. And I think that brings us to about a close. But for those of you that are in person, don't go too far, because in about 30 minutes we're going to kick off with some networking. Unfortunately, those watching online cannot join for that. Should have been here in person. But we'll reset and be back at about 5 o'clock. Thanks, everyone.